Let's give 2 minutes. Let them give them 2 minutes. See if we can recruit.
Colleagues, good afternoon, and so good to have you back here, and thank you so much for coming back on time. So we had, before we left the room, we had already concluded item 17, which we previously had skipped. We went to item 18, and on item 18, we were on the Committee on the Human Rights of Parliamentarians, and we did our elections, and we went to the Gender Partnership Group. So now we are going back to item 18, on which we are going to the Forum of Young Parliamentarians of the IPU, and we are going to have our president, Mr. Dan Carden from the United Kingdom, and he's representing Liverpool. He likes to mention his constituency. Mr. Dan Carden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for that very individual introduction. I appreciate it. Mr. Secretary-General, dear colleagues, friends, the Forum of Young Parliamentarians met on the 14th of October with over 65 young MPs from 47 countries in attendance. 36% of the MPs were women. This is a lower proportion than the last forum, and something I hope we can reverse the trend on next time. This forum meeting was a special one, as it marked our 10-year anniversary, meeting a decade later, almost to the day, to when the first forum meeting took place. Therefore, we had a nostalgic look on the painstaking work of the pioneers who made this forum a reality. We heard video messages from them, which left us with a renewed sense of solidarity in our aspiration to empower youth. And Madam President, may I thank you for your support for the forum and for your remarks. And I also want to thank the Secretary-General as the Secretary of the committee that first constituted the forum all those years ago. Your steadfast support over the years is deeply appreciated. During the meeting, we young MPs then shared our own testimonials of how the Forum has helped empower us in our work. As one board member said, we, the young MPs, have arrived. Looking ahead, we committed to future efforts to empowering young women and youth with disabilities. After, we updated each other on recent developments, including increasing number of young MPs following elections and initiatives to strengthen links with youth parliaments. It was also inspiring to see Namibia bring 2 young members of their children's parliament to the meeting. Colleagues, in line with the theme of the general debates, we discussed harnessing science, technology and innovation from a youth perspective. We emphasised the need for greater access, investment and education. We also discussed the resolution on AI, highlighting the need to protect young people from misinformation, deepfakes and invasions of privacy. We then held a Q&A session on taking the I Say Yes to Youth in Parliament campaign to the next level. The campaign has brought transformative changes in many parliaments, and we shared our conviction that the campaign remains as relevant today as it was when it was instigated. We highlighted the challenge of election financing, which prevents many young people from running for office, and applauded laws that create a more level playing field. In preparation for the next Assembly, the Forum appointed me to prepare a youth overview report to the proposed resolution on the 2-state solution, and my fellow board member, Wilson Soto from Peru, was appointed for the resolution on mitigating the impact of conflict on sustainable development. We also welcomed a new board member, Miss Fatima Sauda from the Maldives. Welcome. At the meeting of the board of the Forum, we held a minute's silence for victims impacted by the conflict in the Middle East. We deplored that conflict has a disproportionate impact on young people, and tragically, they are usually left without a voice. We declared that this Forum must not be voiceless, and that we must speak out for young people and lead efforts to involve youth in peace building. Finally, yesterday, we also held our first open session of the Forum, where we heard from several dozen youth leaders, as well as young people around the world through video messages. Thanks to the IPU, we are building bridges with young people and civil society globally. This is a win-win for all, and I hope we'll continue to nurture these partnerships through future assemblies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for that report. Colleagues, I'm not seeing any delegation that would like to take the floor. So do I take that we adopt the report by the President of the Forum of Young Parliamentarians? It is so decided. Thank you very much. Now I would like to call on, we will still go to the Forum of Women at a later point, but now the Committee on the Middle East Questions. Do we have the chair ready?
Yes, he's coming down now.
Okay. So now we will be hearing from our chair of the Committee on the Middle East Questions, and then, as usual, we will have a chance later to see if there are any colleagues who would like to take the floor. Mr. Henrik Jan Talsma from Netherlands, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. On behalf of the Committee on Middle East Questions, I'm pleased to deliver this report on the committee's activities. Dear colleagues, the meetings of the committee since the last assembly have taken place against the backdrop of an escalation of the conflict in Israel, Palestine, and the broader region, including the further deterioration of the already catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza, the declining security situation in the West Bank, the expansion of the military conflict into Lebanon, and the attacks on and from state and non-state actors allied with Hamas. On June 20 and July 11 this year, the committee convened 2 informal online meetings to coordinate a visit to the region. Mainly due to significant security issues, the committee ultimately had to decide to postpone this visit, prioritizing the safety of the delegation and the effectiveness of the mission. A formal meeting took place on the 14th and 16th of October this week. A central agenda item was the committee's mandate and role-taking and its desire to meaningfully contribute to the peace process, whilst faced with significant differences between the conflicting parties and a lack of consensus amongst the international community reflected within the committee. Members recognized the need for dialogue instead of condemnations and an open mind instead of distrust as foundations for its ongoing work in a unique setting where both conflict parties most involved sit at the very same table. The discussion about mandate, role and functioning will be continued, and both the ex officio members, Palestine and Israel, are supposed to play a significant part in it. Members also acknowledged a desire for improved coordination among IPU bodies and representatives working on Middle East issues to avoid fragmentation. A representative from UNRWA provided an overview of the current situation in Gaza, the West Bank and Lebanon, and he shed light on the important services UNRWA is providing and how its work has been negatively impacted since October 7, a year ago. The representative emphasized the critical impact of some specific bills recently proposed in the Knesset that, if passed, would endanger UNRWA's operations and even its existence. The committee members expressed support for the goals UNRWA stands for. Moreover, the Committee on Middle East Questions wants to make a firm and very urgent appeal to all the members of the Knesset not to pass these bills and to do whatever is in their power to improve the delivery of humanitarian aid to all those in need, especially now that wintertime is approaching, and to contribute to rebuilding mutual trust and cooperation with UNRWA as a United Nations body with a unique, indispensable and irreplaceable position to deliver on what is so desperately needed by so many. The committee also heard from the King Hamad Global Center for Peaceful Coexistence, who shared valuable information about its activities for promoting peaceful and inclusive societies. To conclude, Madam President, dear colleagues, despite the extremely worrying circumstances facing the Middle East, and by extension facing the committee, members reiterated their commitment to parliamentary diplomacy. Until a visit to the region can take place in a safe and productive manner, the committee will explore options to have a regional retreat to reflect and renew its mandate and impact, grounded in dialogue and guided by human rights principles for a better tomorrow for all in the region. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, our chair of this committee on the Middle East questions. We also take note of all the important points that you have raised, and also the call for peace, the call for dialogue and lesser condemnation. So I was trying to look around and see if there is any colleague. Which?
Yemen.
Okay. So we have Yemen would like to take the floor. Mr. President of the committee, you can have a seat. You can have a seat. So Yemen, please request for the floor. Okay. Yes, you have the floor.
شكرا السيدة الرئيسة ويؤسفني.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I'm very disappointed with this report, which I was awaiting with great impatience. We all know this committee, and we know that it has always dealt with Middle East questions. I first participated at an IPU meeting over 30 years ago. It seems to me that things have changed. Maybe the IPU has moved in a different direction, because this isn't really a report that we've heard. It's a rather modest account with a modest appeal made to the Knesset, requesting that UNRWA be able to continue its work. It's as if nothing had happened, as if there hadn't been thousands of deaths of children and women. This seems to me to be a rather tone-deaf report that is oblivious of what's happening. If I understand it, we heard that Israel did not allow the committee to go to Israel. Well, I think that the committee should be in Israel, in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon. I'm very, very sad, Madam President, to see this committee in such a weak position. The IPU cannot remain inactive and insensitive to this human tragedy. We cannot allow Israel to spread suffering and death. We cannot allow for the ill treatment and the rape of the women and children of Palestine. This cannot go on. Israel is in no way called to account or sanctioned. What is happening now is simply terrorism. In other words, I don't think that the report we have just heard has anything to do with what is actually happening in the area. There are over 150,000 casualties if you look at the dead and the wounded. And all we're doing now is ask Israel to allow UNRWA to continue with its work. I think there should be there should be insistence on the need to allow medication through. Genocide is to be brought to an end, and there has to be an end to all this ethnic cleansing. We do not feel that this report is worthy of the IPU. This is not really worthy of the Committee on Middle East Questions, and that is why we really feel that we must speak up in the face of the deaths in Palestine and Lebanon. We must have a report that sheds some light on what is actually happening in the area. Otherwise, let's simply stop the committee from working, because it doesn't seem to be worth anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Yemen. We have taken note of your concern, but I also have been informed that Turkey has requested the floor. Please press the button to request to speak. Yeah.
Hanım, çok teşekkür ederim.
Yeah,
Biz Middle East
Thank you very much. In the Middle East Committee on Middle East Affairs, I'd like to thank our president of the committee. We have listened to the experts, especially what was told by the representative was so striking and was very impressive, especially an institution like an IPU against the entity of Israel should take the necessary reactions. That refers to as a terrorist organization, but people in Gaza are suffering from hunger and some sufferings. So the institution that supports the people of Gaza should be definitely supported. So this is a humanitarian obligation for us. So we invite and urge all the parliamentarians and members of the parliaments to offer their generous support against the attacks of Israel, against the United Nations organizations and agencies should be reacted in the proper manner. In Palestine or Ukraine or other parts of the world, these agencies, UN agencies, are struggling for them, but we do not know who will need such agencies tomorrow. So They were established and founded with great prices, with humanitarian efforts, and many people put efforts into the establishment of these agents. We need to support them, and no force in the world, no harming activities should prevent them from operating. So against the Secretary General of UN or other UN agencies, we need to be very alert, and such aggressions and attacks should be stopped, and the country that inflicts those aggressions should be reacted in the right manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would let the President of the Committee on the Middle East respond to the two concerns that have been raised by the members.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I think our esteemed colleague from Yemen has made it quite clear that he was disappointed with the report. I've taken due note of that. At the same time, I bring to his attention, Madam President, that the first goal, the first objective of this committee, the first rule in our mandate is follow the peace process and to foster dialogue. And I can imagine that fostering dialogue is very difficult and very hard when it comes to speaking up in the way our esteemed colleague from Yemen did. Maybe that is more a contribution for a debate here in the plenary session, but in the Committee on Middle East Questions, we really try to foster dialogue, and we really try to talk with each other in a modest way. And I take that as a compliment from my colleague from Yemen, that he noticed that the tone was modest. And I think that is the way this committee should continue to work. I would like to make it very clear concerning the visit that in no way whatsoever, neither the Palestine delegation nor the Israeli delegation made any objections or placed anything in the way to paying the visit there. There was no way of blocking the visit or putting up barriers, neither by the Palestinians nor by the Israelis. As I told the Governing Council, it was just a matter of security issues that made the committee decide that it was impossible at that moment to pay the visit. And that is what it is. The last point I would like to address is what our colleague from Yemen has said about sanctioning. I may remind him of the fact that the Committee on Middle East Questions is not in the position to sanction whoever, whenever, and whatsoever. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. We also appreciate the recommendations that you have put forward, but also the readiness of the committee to take further engagements, but also to visit the Middle East. So we really appreciate the good work that you're doing and wish you all the best, and we shall always support you as we have always done. Thank you so much. Thank you. Colleagues, that said, we will now go to the Forum of Women Parliamentarians, and the Vice President of this forum, Honorable Ilimi, is going to address us. You have the floor.
شكرا السيدة الرئيسة. بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السيدة رئيسة الاتحاد البرلماني.
In the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful. Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, fellow parliamentarians. May God bless you. It is a pleasure for me to report to you on the 38th session of the Forum of Women Parliamentarians on behalf of Cynthia Lopez Castro, the president of the forum, who had to return to Mexico. The forum was held on the 13th of October. It brought together 147 participants, 108 parliamentarians from 77 countries. 199 women and 9 men were in attendance. We reviewed the draft resolution on the use of artificial intelligence and its effects on human rights and democracy. And we also considered the adverse effects of artificial intelligence that can lead to even more polarization. And we also considered the way in which artificial intelligence can lead to more violence, which can adversely affect women and girls. This kind of AI-linked violence can hamper women's participation in public and parliamentary life, which would be a setback for parliamentary and political life. We therefore decided to suggest that laws be adopted to encourage women and girls to study STEM subjects, and that there be legislation adopted in order to regulate the use of AI, and that there be an effort made to combat sexist stereotypes. We also suggested 3 amendments to the draft resolution so that gender can be taken into account in that resolution. We discussed ways of helping women and girls in conflict and post-conflict situations, and suggested that harsher sanctions be imposed on those responsible for sexual or sexist offenses. And we also looked at ways in which those who commit crimes of violence or sexual crimes can be brought to justice. We talked about the need to enhance international cooperation in this area and to ensure that this is all taken into account when there is a question of peace building and reconstruction. All of this has to be done in a fair way, and gender parity has to be taken into account. We also looked at the situation of women and girls in conflict zones, particularly in Palestine, and expressed our solidarity with them. We also, ladies and gentlemen, had a discussion on gender parity. We noted that there have been some reversals in this situation in certain regions of the world. Many men parliamentarians, male colleagues, have participated in this discussion and agree with their women colleagues that something needs to be done to restore the situation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Our Vice President of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians. I don't see any delegation wanting to take the floor, so do I take it that we adopt the report? Thank you very much. I also apologize, we hadn't adopted the report on the Committee on the Middle East. Do I take it that we also adopt the report on the Committee on the Middle East? Thank you so much. It is so decided. Colleagues, now we go to our committee to promote respect for international humanitarian law. We have here Mr. Kiarie, who is the chair, and he's going to present the report. Please, Mr. Kiarie, you have the floor.
Madam President, I thank you. And before I start, dear colleagues, I want to take this opportunity to thank my fellow members of the committee for the respect of international humanitarian law, who gave me an opportunity to serve 2 terms, and my terms have come to an end, and allow me to take this opportunity to also congratulate the Right Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives of Malta for being elected the new president of this committee. Dear colleagues, our sessions in Geneva were yet again very busy, and I must say they were also very emotional. I will not cover all the points that we discussed in our sessions, but suffice it to say that you have the reports in your deck of documents, and you might be able to see all the deliberations that we undertook. We had the privilege of hearing in Geneva the testimony of Ms. Niep Smoen, a woman landmine survivor who now cares for others as a nurse, and Ms. Dipti Gurung, an amazing lady who is the winner of the Nansen Award, who fought all her life to make sure that her daughters could have a nationality and not remain stateless. These life stories are lessons of courage and show us that there is hope and that change is possible. With that, I would like to turn to two very important points that we discussed. The first is relevant to the debate that we had here as the theme of our General Assembly, and this has to do with the developments and the concerns regarding the implementation of and contemporary challenges into the international humanitarian laws. And I'd like to report to this plenary that the ICRC just produced a report on the international humanitarian law and the challenges of contemporary armed conflicts. We delved in our discussions into the issue of digital technologies in warfare, including cyber operations, autonomous weapons, systems and military operations in outer space, and all these other issues that are technology in contemporary warfare. These technologies are not a distant prospect. They are here with us. They are now a reality, which we all need to further pay attention to. The second point of discussion that is one that concerns the situation in Sudan. Sudan currently faces the largest internal displacement crisis in the world. Dear colleagues, the largest. There are 8.1 million internally displaced persons and 2.3 million refugees and asylum seekers in other countries. Sudan faces significant child displacement crisis in the world, with over 4.6 million children displaced inside and outside of the country. Protection concerns include discrimination, exploitation and abuse, sexual and gender-based violence, arrest, detention and deportation, food insecurity, just to name a few. The international community has called an end to the conflict, a commitment to peace, the protection of civilians, and compliance with international humanitarian law. But we are not there yet, and we need your voice as parliamentarians and as political leaders to put an end to this human disaster. Please raise this situation of Sudan in your parliaments, in your geopolitical groups, in your regional groups, and please support the assistance efforts to civilian victims of this very terrible conflict. Lastly, Madam President, in view of the current situation in the Middle East, we, the members of the committee, would like to draw your attention yet again to the importance of ensuring respect for international humanitarian law. Madam President, we have a plea which was approved unanimously by our committee, which I would now like to read. And the plea reads as such: the committee to promote respect for international humanitarian law, whose primary mission includes the protection of civilians in armed conflict and enabling international humanitarian and regional organizations to extend a helping hand to all humans on this planet, calls upon the international community within the framework of the Inter-Parliamentary Union meetings to put pressure on the parties to the conflict in Israel, Lebanon, and Gaza to avert the region from the spectra of a full-scale war from which no one will escape. The escalation of the conflict, the disruption of oil flow from the Mediterranean and the Arabian Gulf to Europe, and the deterioration of the global economy will affect all of us. Therefore, we call upon everyone to exercise restraint and to avoid being dragged into wars. We call on everyone to respect and ensure the respect for international humanitarian law, which we have all agreed as nations of this world to be bound by. Respect for international humanitarian law means that all civilians must be protected and should not be the objects of attack. Obligations under the international humanitarian law include the humane treatment of detainees and the release of the hostages. End of our plea. Madam President and colleagues, I thank you profusely and we count on you to act. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kieriem, for this report. Colleagues, we have heard the plea of the Committee on International Humanitarian Law, and we have all, after hearing the plea, we have noted the points that have been raised, and I believe this plea is also contained in the documents that you have. It calls upon all of us to work towards respect and ensuring respect of international humanitarian law and protection of all civilians that bear the brunt of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Colleagues, I thank the committee for reaffirming these important and fundamental principles which all of us are bound by. Can I suggest that this Council today joins this plea and endorses it? Thank you very much. So we have endorsed the plea, and I am not seeing any delegation that would like to take the floor. That said, do I take it that, colleagues, we approve the Yemen, Nigeria, okay. Colleagues, in the interest of time, 2 minutes. So I don't know if we have the guy for the timer.
I'll keep the time.
Okay, so 2 minutes, Yemen, then we'll come to Nigeria. Yemen? Okay.
شكرا سيد الرئيسة والشكر.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to thank those who drafted this report. I think this is a fair report, and I hope that the IPU will take this message on board so that it is heard by everyone, the international community, the United Nations system, and all those people who must recognize that there is an emergency in Palestine, and though what is happening in Lebanon is a worry, what is happening in Jabalia is a catastrophe. Palestinians who are bombed to death die of hunger or from a lack of medication. This is a message that must be conveyed to everyone, including the media. In other words, while we were not entirely happy with the first report that we heard on the Middle East, the Committee on Middle East Questions, we are delighted with this one, and we really do think that it should be made available to the media. I'm sorry to say that the previous report was really trying to be all things to all people, whereas the one we have before us is fair, and the appeal made in it does seem to me to be of the utmost importance, and I do think that it should be given the broadest possible publicity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nigeria, can you request the floor to... Okay.
Thank you.
Nigeria, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President and honorable colleagues. I always like listening to reports from the chairman of this committee. Last section 148 was fantastic, and this one also quite comprehensive. But only to the effect that I didn't hear much about the issues in Africa that I'm concerned with this report. Does it mean by your submission that there are no humanitarian issues and breach of international humanitarian laws in Africa? In view of what is happening in Africa currently, without going into so much details, we are aware that our brothers are displaced. Over 2 million of them are without homes in the crisis of DRC. We are aware that for 30 years, issues have been going on in Africa, in that region, and has not gotten the prominence that it requires from these Inter-Parliamentary Union. Mr. Chairman, you are from Africa, and some of these things are happening beside you. I'm surprised that I didn't hear it on the pages of your report, that humanitarian laws international humanitarian laws are being breached in Africa, including the countries all of us come from. Does it mean that your mandate does not include Africa? And if yes, where did you cover? And what is the report from Africa, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much. Palestine? Please request the floor. Yeah.
شكرا سيد الرئيسة وشكرا للسيد رئيس اللجنة على الجهود التي بذلت وأنا كنت أستمع إلى النداء.
Thank you to the committee for all of your efforts. I have listened carefully, and I would have liked for you to focus more on the violation of international humanitarian law, which is the occupation in accordance with the Hague Advisory Opinion and also in according to the UN resolution. The worst type of violations of international humanitarian law is the occupation. And you're talking about the two sides as we have in the report. And here I think we need to draw a distinction between the occupying power and that being occupied, because there are a number of legal aspects that come into play. And this means that all parliamentarians need to make an effort in order to put an end, in accordance with constitutional law. You've referred to artificial intelligence. And here we're not seeing anything in terms of international law, and we are awaiting the Red Cross International Conference, which will be held in the near future. We know that there are a number of resolutions issued by this organization, and I think it would be helpful to know that one of the members of this parliament is putting forward a series of draft legislation which constitutes a violation of international humanitarian law. And seeing this happen in the 21st century is something that we know our friends in the Sudan are well aware of, as is the case in other African countries. The policy of using hunger as a weapon of war is only being used in Palestine and in Gaza, and it is basically burning people alive, preventing people from actually accessing humanitarian aid. I certainly hope that all parliaments will bear this in mind and that we will see a common parliamentary effort in order to preserve humanity and the right to life, which is the first of all rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now give the opportunity to the chair of this committee to respond.
Madam President, I must thank you.
Thank you.
And we do appreciate the interventions that have been put through, the intervention by Yemen and the intervention by Palestine. We do take that into cognizance. And for the reaction from Nigeria, I'm very keen to let the delegation from Nigeria know that our committee does do work on very many issues that come before our committee. And we have been interrogating and investigating situations in so many different parts of the world. As concerns Africa, the issue that you raise about the DRC, did come before our committee, and we presented ably in the 148th Assembly our work as we had prosecuted it. In this case, we also took quite a number of issues into consideration, and we took one emergency item, and it so happened that, to the mind of the committee, the Sudan situation was the most critical, and we attended to it. So this committee is cognizant of what you raise, and Africa is a concern, and yes, the situation in Africa is a concern to this committee and is being attended to. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. We really appreciate the good work that you're doing and all the support that you need. We will keep doing that, and thank you. Once again, you have said goodbye to us, but we hope to see more of you on the other committees as well. Thank you so much for your dedication. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have some vacancies under this committee, so the Council is called upon to elect 2 members of the committee to promote respect of international humanitarian law, 1 man from Eurasia Group to replace Mr. Sinchevici from the Republic of Moldova, and 1 woman to replace Ms. Muyumba from DRC, who is no longer a member of parliament. Dear colleagues, we have received 1 candidate of Ms. Esther Jailos Jolobala from Malawi, who will be representing the Africa Geopolitical Group, but we haven't received any from Eurasia Group. So we will urge Eurasia Group to bring the candidate. But for now, because we only have received 1, do I take it, members, that we elect the 1 candidate that has been presented to us? Thank you very much. The Governing Council has elected this member. Sorry, colleagues, when we were considering the report by the Forum of Women, by the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians, it had skipped me that we needed to elect 2 members for the Forum of Women Parliamentarians, and we need to elect 2, and we have 2 candidates. So the following candidates were elected with the mandate ending in March 2027. So we are supposed. Okay, I was just asking here. So these colleagues were elected in the Forum of Women Parliamentarians. So here they come to us for endorsement. So we have Ms. Rim Machaoui from Tunisia. Is she here? Okay. And then we have Ms. Visaradi Ticharawat, from Thailand. Is she here? Okay. So, colleagues, do we endorse these candidates who were brought to us by the women parliamentarians? It is so decided. Thank you so much, colleagues. Now we go to, now we are going to listen from the advisory group on health. I would now like to invite the Vice Chair of the Advisory Group on Health, Dr. Faustin Dugulile from the United Republic of Tanzania, to present the report of the meeting. Dr. Dugulile, you have the floor.
The IPU Advisory Group on Health met on the 13th of October 2024 with 4 out of 5 members in attendance, as well as technical partners from the World Health Organization, the Partnership for Maternal, Newborn and Child Health, the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis and Malaria, and the UNAIDS. We discussed the follow-up of the 2019 IPU resolution on universal health coverage, UHC. We had an update on global health governance development pertaining to UHC from Dr. Bruce Eward, WHO Assistant Director General for UHC and Life Cause. We decided to focus on challenges restricting access to health services, including financial barriers. The group asked the IPU Secretariat to prepare a monitoring framework for the implementation of the resolution, taking into account existing resources and called for capacity building for parliamentarians. We further discussed the current outbreak of Mpox, which was declared a public health emergency of international concern by the WHO Director General in August 2024. We reflected on the shift of attention away from the other health priorities, the pressure of health emergencies on health systems, and the importance of equity to be at the center of decisions on disease treatment and vaccine distribution. We also reiterated the important role of parliamentarians play in raising awareness and engaging communities, which are key to stop Mpox. As part of the efforts to strengthen linkages between IPU's work on health and climate change, the group decided to submit a contribution to the outcome document of the COP29 parliamentary meeting. We wish to highlight that climate change is a health risk multiplier and to call for policies and investment to address key challenges related to health, food insecurities, extreme weather-related illnesses, and vector-borne diseases. The group was briefed on the process of amendments of the IP statutes and rules, as well as its transformation into an IPU committee. We also heard updates from our technical partners and welcomed continued cooperation with WHO and PMCH. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ndugulile, for this report. Colleagues, okay, I have seen only Nigeria who would like to take the floor. So please request for the floor. Okay.
Thank you.
Nigeria, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President and honorable colleagues. Once again, beautiful reports. But I want to mention that in this era of fighting for global health, my continent, Africa, is fully dependent on the Western world for survival. When we experienced COVID, it was obvious that even the face masks that we put on and the hand gloves, they came from other countries, the Western world. And we cannot talk about health security in Africa, for example, without talking about local content in industrialization. What is the sustainability of health security in the continent without putting in place structures that will make us provide at least the basic things that we need without depending on other parts of the world for survival? Monkeypox started recently, I was told, from DRC, and it started spreading. And most of the time, vaccines and all the rest of them will come from other parts of the world. It ought not to be so. Conversations around these issues should be one of the interests of your committee. What has your committee done in ensuring that though we receive help from all over the world as a continent, what instrument, what structures are we putting in place to see that our health security is sustainable? At the moment, it is not. And I didn't hear it in your report that conversations along that side was held. We cannot run to other parts of the world all the time. What is your committee doing about that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We had only one intervention, colleagues. Dr. Ndugulile, please, you have the floor.
No, thank you very much for that intervention from Nigeria, and I think it's very pertinent. It's very true. The number of health emergencies in the continent are on the rise, and these are due to fragile health system that we're currently having in the continent. But let me assure you that one of the priorities that our group is looking at, but also the African Union and the WHO Afro are looking at, is building the capacity of local manufacturing of medicines, vaccines, and health commodities in the continent. And this is one of the areas that we are prioritizing going forward. And maybe let me just say this as the incoming director, the regional director of WHO Afro. This is an area that I'll be focusing on going forward once I take over my mandate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I won't say much about that, but the Secretary General is going to say a bit about the incoming WHO Regional Director for Africa. So, colleagues, do I take it that we endorse the report? Thank you very much, Dr. Ndugulile. Now I would like to give the floor to the Secretary General to briefly say some words about Dr. Ndugulile. Mr. Secretary General.
Madam President, during this assembly, we are saying goodbye to many outstanding figures of the IPU. And the contexts in which we say goodbye are different from one personality to the other. Yesterday, we said goodbye to Professor Kachavivi, Speaker of Namibia, who is retiring. Now, I have the distinct pleasure of saying goodbye, in quotes, to somebody who has been a prominent figure of the IPU and its work on health. I mean Dr. Ndugulile Faustin. He is from the United Republic of Tanzania. No relationship intended, Madam President. Dr. Ndugulile has been involved in the work of this advisory group from the very beginning, and he has held positions including chair of that group and now vice chair. As he himself has let the cat out of the bag, he was recently elected WHO Regional Director for Africa, and I would like, on behalf of the parliamentary community, to congratulate him. As I do so, I do it with a lot of pride, because you have informed the work of the IPU in the area of health in particular, and now we can say that you are exporting the expertise of the IPU to the WHO. Normally, it is WHO that brings its expertise to us, and today it is you who are taking the parliamentary community to WHO. I want to pin a lot of hopes on the strengthening of our cooperation, and as I do so, I'm reminded of the very thoughtful comments made by Dr. Benjamin Kalu from Nigeria. Now that we have our own person in-house in WHO, there's no reason why Africa should not be on the forefront of the health agenda. So that is, Faustin, your work is cut out for you. We'll not let you off the hook, I hope. This is not the last we are seeing of you. I do know that you were in Berlin early this week, and you came back here to work with your colleagues on the advisory group on health, and you are here today to present the report. So we count on your support. We are determined, as somebody who has been working with you over the years, we are determined to strengthen our cooperation with WHO so that health outcomes are better for all and not just for a group of individuals in the world. So congratulations, Godspeed with you, and we look forward to seeing more of you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary General, for those kind words to our outgoing Vice Chair of the Advisory Group on Health. We'll now go to a group of facilitators for Cyprus, and I understand there is no oral report for this group. However, this group of facilitators for Cyprus, the Governing Council will elect a facilitator to fill a vacancy, and so far we have received one from Portugal, Mr. Caneiro from Portugal. I don't know if he's in the house. Caneiro, are you in the house? No, but colleagues, may I take it that we wish to elect Mr. Caneiro to this, to our group of facilitators for Cyprus? Thank you so much. It is so decided. Sorry?
Werley? Yes, Laurent.
Colleagues, apologies. I was informed there will be no oral report, but now I'm told the chair is here and would like to report. So, Mr. Chair, you have the report. You have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Madame la...
Thank you very much, Madam President, dear colleagues. Just a few words to talk to you about the group of facilitators for Cyprus. We met during this session. It was on the 13th of October. We just had one facilitator present. That was yours truly, together with 5 representatives from the Republic of Cyprus and 2 from the political parties of the Turkish Cypriot part. We had lengthy discussions about the situation. There's work that has been done by the UN Secretary General Special Rapporteur in recent months, and the parties expressed their hope that the informal meeting by the UN Secretary General would bring the 2 parties, in other words, the head, the president of Cyprus, and the leader of the Turkish Cypriot community together. This was a meeting on the 15th of October in New York, and it was hoped that this meeting would bring about a breakthrough in the relationships and finding a solution. It was decided that there will be more meetings in the future. Dear colleagues, Madam President, the group of facilitators is going to continue with its work. Also, with the election of our colleague from Portugal, we will continue to work, and we certainly hope that this situation that has gone on for far too long will find a solution in the near future. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you have gone down before I have adopted the report. Before we have adopted your report. Anyway, I don't see any hands, so you can stand there as we adopt your report. Colleagues, so I take it that we adopt the report. It is so adopted. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for that very concise and informative report. Now, colleagues, we go to high-level advisory group on countering terrorism and violent extremism. I'm now going to give the floor to the chair of the high-level advisory group on countering terrorism and violent extremism, Mr. Matthias Carlsson from Sweden. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, dear fellow parliamentarians, it is an honor for me to address you today as the chairperson of the high-level advisory group on countering terrorism and violent extremism. I will present the outcomes of our meeting held during this assembly. We have discussed and agreed on the work program presented by the Secretariat. I extend my deepest gratitude to the program team for their relevant and well-prepared documents, which highly enhanced our discussions. We reached a consensus during this assembly on establishing the ad hoc mechanism, a key recommendation in the declaration titled Global Response to the Call of the Sahel, ratified during the 2nd Global Parliamentary Summit on Countering Terrorism and Violent Extremism that was held in Luanda in 2023. This mechanism will coordinate activities related to the project The Call of the Sahel, consisting of 5 age-log facilitators, each responsible for the priority areas of community, environment, security, development, and education. We also recognized the need for parliamentarians to initiate a broad dialogue on defining terrorism. Members agreed to begin this process and emphasized the importance of achieving a consensus definition and to avoid unproductive debates. Another significant topic was the situation in the Sahel, where our efforts must remain relevant and effective particularly in the light of recent instabilities. The epicenter of terrorism in the world continues, unfortunately, to reside in this region. Several countries in the region are facing severe security challenges. Members agreed to address the 5 areas outlined in the Call of the Sahel project to bolster stability as much as possible. Furthermore, while some countries in the region face serious instability, this should not hinder our continued collaboration with all constructive forces that remains in the region. We as parliamentarians have a duty to ease human suffering in Africa. We must stand in solidarity with all people of the world who suffer and are victims under violent extremism and terrorism, wherever it occurs. By doing so, we will also enhance the security of families, communities, and nations all over the world, including our own. Additionally, 2 new topics were agreed upon for discussion in the next AGELAG meeting. The first will focus on utilizing artificial intelligence in the fight against organized crime and terrorism. The second will address the prevention of violent extremism in the fight against violent extremism and forced migration. We had a participation at our meeting during this assembly by 2 experts, Mrs. Lombardi from UNODC and Mr. Strobans from IEP. They presented their work on combating terrorism and shared their knowledge with us. They talked about organized crimes and the connections between organized crime and terrorism. Both agreed on the importance of addressing the needs of victims of terrorism, as they can become important messengers of peace. They emphasized the crucial role of parliamentarians in safeguarding victims and ensuring that this issue remains a priority for us. Mr. Strobans also shared data with us on new trend in terrorist operation and their association with organized crime, particularly in Africa. Both commended the accomplishments of the IPU and the AGELAG. Finally, before I leave the stage, I would like to urge members who have not yet submitted their information for the Global Parliamentarian Network on Countering Terrorism to please do so. I urge all parliamentarians to scan the QR code, which I hope are now displayed on the screen, and to join us in this network. I also encourage you to download the CT-PVE app, which provides access to first-hand information on peace and security and enables you to hold meetings with the IPU secretariats and other parliamentarians. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carlson, for that report. Colleagues, I don't see any delegation wanting to take the floor. So do you wish to approve this report? Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for your concise report and for all the good work that you have been doing with your committee. We really appreciate. Colleagues, now the Governing Council will elect 6 members from the geopolitical groups who have been nominated. And these will be holding their term until October 2028. So the following candidates were elected by the geopolitical groups. The Arab group brought us Ms. Abouras, member of the House of Representatives from Libya. Asia Pacific group has brought to us Wan Kede, member of the Lok Sabha, India. And so Asia Pacific, we have Ms. Wan Kede from Lok Sabha, India, and we also have Ms. Rashid, a member of the People's Majlis, Maldives. So, and then we still need one more. We still need one person to fill in one vacancy that is remaining. So Asia Pacific group, we need one more candidate. Also Eurasia group, we still need one candidate from Eurasia group. And 12 Plus have nominated Mr. Moreland, member of the Storting, Norway. Colleagues, do I take that we wish to elect these members to this committee? Thank you very much. It is so decided. So I would like to congratulate all of you who have been entrusted by the your geopolitical groups and eventually endorsed by the Governing Council. Now we go to the Working Group on Science and Technology, and on this I would like to welcome Mr. Naughton from Ireland to take the floor. Mr.
Thank
Naughton,
you,
have the floor.
Madam President, and I'm pleased to report on our Working Group on Science and Technology's activities during this Assembly. The theme of the Assembly aligns closely with our mission to integrate scientific insights into legislative processes for global peace and sustainability. I'm happy to announce that the results of our Working Group survey on mapping engagement between Parliament and science is now available on the Assembly website. This showcases good practices in parliamentary engagement with scientific communities in 85 parliaments. I'd encourage you to explore the findings for valuable insights and inspiration for further collaboration. This mapping process is the first element of a draft toolbox that was circulated this week to assist parliamentarians' engagement with the scientific and academic communities. During our meeting on the 15th of October, we discussed the follow-up to the first edition of the IPU Science for Peace Schools on water and the outcome from the parliamentary meeting at the 10th World Water Forum in Bali. Key actions included making water a standing item on parliamentary agendas, using the Sustainable Development Goals framework for long-term water policies, protecting human rights to water and sanitation, and advocating for sustainable water management to combat climate change. We outlined practical steps to advance these recommendations, including cooperation with the World Water Council and the UN Water Convention. We also planned the second edition of the Science for Peace Schools, focusing on AI and ethics in sessions for parliamentary staff and parliamentarians in May and September 2025, respectively. These sessions aim to bridge science and politics, fostering a community of parliamentary experts to address AI challenges. We agreed to that the current political climate is favourable for the adoption of the IPU Charter on the Ethics of Science and Technology. The Governing Council's adoption of the Charter this morning is a strong testament to this. We urge all parliamentarians to prioritise disseminating the Charter and advocating for its application at governmental and parliamentary levels, working with scientists and academia. Our working group is also planning a campaign to raise awareness of the Charter during IPU assemblies, conferences and events. Colleagues, we must all now prioritise diligent follow-up to promote its implementation as a model for ethical considerations in technological advancements such as AI. The working group decided to develop an annex to the Charter with guidelines for monitoring its implementation and evaluating its impact. This will facilitate robust engagement with the Charter, ensuring that its goals are realised and its benefits maximised for all our communities. The Ethical Charter complements the Science for Peace Schools. The Charter provides a framework for responsible decision-making in science and technology, while the schools translate these principles into actionable strategies. Together, these incentives equip parliamentarians and staff with the knowledge and skills to implement ethical, evidence-based policies. This connection between ethics and action ensures that scientific and technological advancements contribute to peaceful and sustainable futures. Our work through the Charter in the schools reflects the IPU's mission of ethical stewardship and practical application. As we move beyond this Assembly, I encourage you to engage with these insights and apply them to your work at national and international levels. Together we can shape a future where ethical and scientific innovation leads to peace, security and sustainability. I'm delighted to announce that Sahar Atiyeh from Egypt has been elected as our group chairperson, and Margrethe Cederfelt from Sweden as our vice chairperson. Their leadership will guide us in achieving our goals. I conclude with mixed emotions as I share with you that this will be my last Assembly, as I am retiring after 28 years in Parliament. My time with the IPU has been enriching, fulfilled with invaluable lessons and lasting connections. I'm deeply thankful for the opportunity to collaborate with so many dedicated individuals from diverse communities, all committed to improving lives globally. Together we strive to build a future where every voice is heard and peace and sustainability are within all of our reach. I look forward to witnessing the continued impact of our collective efforts and the promising path ahead for the IPU and its mission. Goramila Mahagav Galer.
Thank you so much, Mr. Naughton, for that report. And colleagues, I don't see any delegation requesting their floor. So do I take it that we endorse this report? It is so decided. Mr. Naughton, sorry, Mr. Naughton, please come back. Please come back. Just stand there so that I don't tire you. Colleagues, once again, the Secretary General is going to say a few words about our colleague, Mr. Naughton.
Madam President, members of the Council, it looks like I'm beginning to become the bearer of bad news to the IPU, because once again I stand up here to bid farewell to a dedicated champion of the IPU. I know it's in the tradition of Ireland to be very active in the IPU, and when we saw you the first time, we knew that we were in for business with you. And I believe that your time at the IPU has been a very active and dynamic one, true to Irish tradition. And I want to stand here on behalf of us all to pay tribute to your leadership in the IPU. We do this with a mixed feeling of gratitude and thanks, but also sadness, because we understand you are going to retire from politics. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Is that correct? But in politics, never say never. We may just see you back because the people want you to be back. But we have witnessed your dedication to the enduring values of our founding fathers, parliamentary diplomacy and dialogue. But above all, we have seen your sterling leadership as chair of the advisory group on science and technology, just as you have explained here this afternoon when presenting the report. We have worked with you over these past years as you steered us through the Charter of Ethics in Science and Technology, and I just want to thank you on behalf of us all for that strong contribution, because today we have earlier on in Council adopted the Charter that you referred to, and it takes the IPU one step forward in ensuring that parliaments can grapple with the ethical dilemmas that come with technological and scientific innovation. I'm glad you say that the advisory working group is going to take this work forward and develop tools that would allow the organization to implement what is in the Charter. So I want to really thank you very much. I know that green is the Irish color, but we want to convert you into blue, which is the IPU color. So I'm pleased to offer you a blue tie from the IPU. So you can wear it as a true champion of the IPU. Okay? Good.
Thank you, Martin. And just to let people know, believe it or not, the actual national colour of Ireland is blue.
Oh.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, after that, I would like to now invite you as the Governing Council to elect 3 members. The geopolitical groups have nominated the following members for a 4-year term ending in October 2028. Asia Pacific Group has nominated Mr. Nofadol Inna from Thailand and Ms. Bijuli Kalita Mehdi from India. The Africa Group has nominated Mr. Fon Chafa Isaac Mbuka from Cameroon. May I take it that you wish to elect these candidates, colleagues? Thank you very much. It is so decided, and congratulations to all of you, dear colleagues. Colleagues, thank you so much for all the discussions and insightful comments that you have made. We have taken note of everything you have said today. So now we will go to item 19, reports on the recent IPU specialized meetings. Colleagues, a number of the meetings you have approved at previous sessions have now taken place, though you can consult details on all of them on the IPU website. We will now hear reports on several of them during this item. Let us start with the parliamentary hearing on the occasion of the 10th World Water Forum, which took place on 19th to 22nd May in Nusa Dua, Indonesia. We will have a video played for this event. The video, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon us all. Honorable colleagues, today we stand at a critical point in history as water scarcity threatens the well-being of over 40% of the global population, with more than 4 billion people lacking access to basic sanitation. This issue was the central focus of the parliamentary meeting held during the 10th World Water Forum in Bali, Indonesia, where representatives from 43 nations came together to address the mounting water crisis. Water and sanitation are not just human rights, they are prerequisite for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Water is integral to health, education, poverty reduction, and gender equality. Yet, the implementation of SDG 6 on clean water and sanitation is significantly off track. The disparities in access to water affect vulnerable populations, especially women and girls, and these inequalities will hinder progress across all SDGs unless urgent action is taken. During the forum, we discussed the importance of making water a permanent agenda item in parliamentary processes. Legislative action should prioritize comprehensive, long-term policies that ensure equitable access to clean water for all. By leveraging the SDG framework, parliamentarians can foster cooperation between local communities and international stakeholders, ensuring that new water management solutions are inclusive and tailored to local needs. Innovation plays a key role here. We heard from experts on how technology can enhance water access and quality. However, it is vital that these innovations are adapted to the realities of each region, especially for marginalized communities. Parliamentary oversight must be strengthened to guarantee that water systems are safe, equitable, and sustainable. We also recognize that water alone is not enough. It must be clean, accessible, and efficiently managed. Another major theme of our discussions was the inseparable link between water and climate change. Climate-related water challenges such as drought and floods are already affecting food and energy production in many parts of the world. Sustainable water management offers an opportunity to build resilience against these impacts, but it requires substantial investment and cross-sector cooperation. Parliamentarians must ensure that national climate strategies incorporate water management and promote adaptive measures that can withstand climate change growing effects. Lastly, we addressed the need for global cooperation in water diplomacy. Water resources often transcend borders, making it critical to foster dialogue and international cooperation. By promoting open dialogue and sharing scientific knowledge, we can transform potential conflicts over water into opportunities for peace and collaboration. So we call for greater evidence-based decision-making, cooperation with scientific communities, and strengthening of international partnership, especially in managing transboundary rivers. In conclusion, the parliamentary community must make water a top priority to meet the commitments of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Water is not just a resource, it is a pathway to peace, equity, and prosperity for future generations. Let us work together to ensure a sustainable, water-secure future for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Do we note this report? Thank you very much. It is so decided. The next activity is the regional seminar on climate change for the Caribbean parliamentarians that took place on 27th to 29th May 2024 in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. A video is also prepared on this event. Please play the video.
Parliamentary updates.
Representatives of regional parliaments recently attended a three-day seminar jointly organized by the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and the Inter-Parliamentary Union. The theme for discussion was accelerating parliamentary action on climate change for a resilient and sustainable region. Speaking at the opening ceremony was Karine Jabr, Director of Division of Programs at the Inter-Parliamentary Union.
The IPU is proud to facilitate such exchanges that allow parliamentarians to strategize together, share their experience, and discuss with colleagues from around the world tangible ways to put the SDGs back on track.
The representative from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, spoke about the session he moderated, climate change and technology, the potential of AI to tackle the climate crisis.
Whatever we do as parliaments and parliamentarians, we must utilize responsible AI.
The objectives of the regional seminar included promoting dialogue with experts and among parliaments, highlighting good practices given parliament's legislative, oversight, representative and budgetary functions, and for parliaments to lead the way in responding to climate change. Stay tuned for more parliamentary updates. For more information, visit our website at ttparliament.org and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram.
Parliamentary updates.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Do we take note of the report? Thank you very much. It is so noted. I would now take the opportunity to invite Mr. David McIntyre from Canada, who is going to present a brief report on the 2024 IPU Parliamentary Forum at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development held on 16th of July in New York, United States of America. Mr. McIntyre, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much, colleagues. Colleagues, the Parliamentary Forum at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development was held in New York on the 16th of July. Some 70 members of Parliament participated. Many of you are here today. Entitled Governance, Deficits and Climate Disasters, the Case for Parliamentary Action, the forum focused on two Sustainable Development Goals under review at the HLPF. First, SDG 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions, and SDG 13 on climate change. As a participant in this meeting, I can assure you that it provided a lot of specialized knowledge. In this short time, let me highlight my own takeaways. First, with only 20% of the SDGs on target by 2030, that's right, only 20% of the SDGs on target by 2030, it's more critical than ever that parliamentarians evaluate their own country's performance and ask a couple of important questions. What can we do better? What's keeping us from doing it? And then get busy implementing solutions. We know that parliaments have a critical role to play to translate global goals into national objectives and to make sure that budgets and laws align accordingly. While most countries have a plan on the SDGs, only 40% have integrated their plans into national budgets. Our own surveys consistently show a low level of parliamentary engagement, 30% at most, in national reviews to the high-level political forum. A lot remains to be done for parliaments to institutionalize the SDGs through our committee systems, our parliamentary budget offices, our audit institutions, and other structures, so they become a part of our political culture and our administrative landscape. In other words, so that they become a part of our reality. Paradoxically, SDG 16, known as the governance goal, is a key enabler of sustainable development and scores second to last among the 17 SDGs in terms of progress made on implementation around the world. States are regressing on their human rights obligations. Conflict and violence are pervasive, and corrupt and unresponsive governments are weakening social contracts and making justice elusive for the most marginalized. Colleagues, unless we put our governance house in order, we're never going to be able to advance in the SDGs as a whole. And as the Secretary General of the United Nations said, it's up to parliamentarians, frankly, to convene and perform a rescue mission for the SDGs. With regard to SDG 13 on climate change, our discussion focused, you guessed it, on money and financing. We concluded that more adequate and accessible climate finance is needed to implement the Paris Agreement. And while public finance has a huge role to play, if we're honest, if we're realistic, we're going to need to mobilize a mixture of funding sources, including much, much more from the private sector. Developed countries, of course, have a special responsibility to assist developing countries in this regard because, of course, they are the least responsible for climate change but face the most consequences. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. McKinty. Colleagues, I don't see any delegation wanting to take the floor. Do I take it that we note this report? Thank you very much. And now we go to the 2024 Inter-Regional Seminar on the Achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals for Parliaments of Developing Countries that took place on 19th to 27th August in Beijing, China. We shall play the video. The video, please.
The 4-decade anniversary marks the enduring cooperation between China's National People's Congress and the Inter-Parliamentary Union. This August, to jointly find a path to achieve the 2030 SDGs, 145 parliamentarians from 32 nations gathered in Beijing, including 16 speakers and 3 deputy speakers. China's President Xi Jinping met with parliamentary leadership and emphasized that exchanges between legislatures are part and parcel of state-to-state relations. Legislatures have the responsibility and ability to play an active role in building equal and mutual trust state relations, expanding win-win development cooperation, promoting open and inclusive exchanges and mutual learning, and promoting fair and reasonable global governance, and making unique contributions to the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. Chairman of the National People's Congress Zhao Leji addressed the opening ceremony. Fruitful outcomes kept coming to light, including the signing of a donation agreement to the IPU counter-terrorism programs. Participants held fruitful discussions on peace and security, economic development, cultural exchanges, and democracy, followed by field visits in China. And ideas sparked at the 2024 Inter-Regional Seminar, Together Towards a Sustainable Future. A common quest for a brighter future leads to a journey through China's industrial heartlands and innovation hubs. From a high-tech agricultural zone revolutionizing farming, to a state-of-the-art coal mine showcasing green technologies, and a vocational training center cultivating future talents.
President Xi's vision is consistent with vision of the IPU in terms of sustainability. We cannot today manage this planet as if we're doing it only for this current generation.
We face the same situation, and now I think we have to learn how China solve this problem.
Let us find the value chains out of those products so that we can grow our economy as a country.
Somalia has fertile ground and land for agriculture, and this can be replicated back to Somalia.
And the idea here is that we are moving away from depending on importation to local production.
Engaging with China's whole process people's democracy, delegates witness legislation in action, voices shaping laws, from community halls to national assemblies. Every opinion counts.
I see that women are well represented.
And I can see that is democracy at its best.
The pace of development of China depends on people giving their input and trying to ensure that everybody works together towards a collective goal.
Your ideas and the thinking basically are helping us to understand how we can improve the system.
And we ought to respect people's cultural differences, people's own form of democracy.
The world's cultures are a vibrant tapestry. It is through cross-cultural exchanges that they truly come to life and bloom.
It's my second visit in China.
Walking the Great Wall, feeling the resilience and unity throughout a 5,000-year history. Exploring the Forbidden City, immersed in cultural and historical treasures unique to China. Marveling at the Yungang grottos, relishing the cultural feast belongs to China and the world beyond. Here, ancient heritage blooms with vibrant grace, as every nation's cultural pulse beats in the world's embrace.
If you ask me how we see the future, we see more cooperation. We see countries learning from each other in a better way.
China's National People's Congress stands ready to share experience for a common pursuit for modernization and sustainable development. Together, we forge stronger bonds between people's representatives across the border. We boost legislative and public support for the building of a community with a shared future for mankind.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, do we take note of the report? It is so decided, thank you. Now we will go to another item, which is the 10th IPU Global Conference of Young Parliamentarians. But before we watch the video, they are going to address us. So we will first hear from, who goes first?
They go together.
Ah, the two of you go together. Oh, the power of youth. Okay, so we have Mr. Dan Cudden, who is the president for the Forum of Young Parliamentarians, and Ms. Hasmik Hakobian from Armenia, who is a member of the board. So please, I don't know how you have organized yourself, like both of you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Secretary General. With only 6 years left to go until 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals promise on education and employment remains largely unfulfilled. Only 1 in 6 countries is on track for universal education, and 1 in 4 young people are not in education, employment, or training. Young people in crisis situations are particularly affected as war, economic crisis, pandemics, and climate change disrupt their lives.
With this in mind, from 12 to 14 September 2024, close to 150 young MPs from over 50 countries came together in Yerevan, alongside government leaders, international organizations, and youth civil society, to discuss how to avoid lost generation and preserve education and employment in all circumstances. Here, we proposed concrete actions to guarantee access to free and compulsory education for all, including through increased budgeting and support for refugees in national systems. We also called for education that builds the skills for tomorrow, with a focus on digital skills.
We also focused on employment. We called for greater investment in youth programs, inclusive labour markets for refugees, and more affordable housing solutions for young people. We also focused on how young MPs can better partner with marginalised groups and those in vulnerable situations, so that no one left behind is not just a cliche, but a reality.
I'm also proud that this conference brought in new innovative sessions, such as working groups and the unconference, where young MPs could co-create the conference. Although we trust that these innovations, as well as the policy outcomes of this conference, will be carried forward in the months and years ahead. We also hope that warm memories of the days spent together in Yerevan will remain as well. In closing, we are pleased to share with you a short video so that we can all get a sense of the magic that occurred during the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Our young members of parliament have done wonders. Do we note the report? Thank you so much. It is so noted. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you so much, Hasmik. Colleagues, we will finish this item with the report on the event that took place at the Summit of the Future, which took place in New York on September 21st. I am pleased to report on the IPU's event at the Summit of the Future, which over 50 parliamentarians attended. In addition to our event, along with others, IPU participated in events organized by the European Parliament and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, and we ensured leading MPs participated in several other events during the high-level week in New York. Leading IPU parliamentarians were at the summit in full force. The main purpose of our event was to highlight the outcome of the summit entitled the Pact for the Future. It's the latest and most far-reaching agreement out of the United Nations on ways to make the multilateral system work as intended, to prevent conflict, to advance development, and to allow everyone a voice. I am very proud that in Action 55 of the Pact, the UN member states make explicit reference to the role of parliaments and of the IPU in overseeing the implementation of international agreements and in providing input to the United Nations deliberative processes. In short, the Pact gives us the strongest mandate since 2000 Millennium Declaration to help democratize the international arena by bringing forth the voices of parliamentarians as representatives of the people. We will flesh out the broad language of Action 55 in the next resolution of the General Assembly on interaction between the United Nations, parliaments, and the IPU next year. While we look to the future and a reformed multilateral system, let's also look back at our achievements at the United Nations. Today, colleagues, most major United Nations meetings take place with at least some parliamentary component. UN officials contribute their expertise at each IPU assembly. United Nations country offices engage parliaments in United Nations development plans. United Nations partners contribute to at least half of the project of the work of the IPU. In short, dear colleagues, IPU has achieved a lot over the years to engage parliaments more closely with the United Nations. Let's scale up this engagement. And that's one of the reasons why we insisted that you also look into the list and see all the activities that the IPU is participating at the United Nations and register well in advance. And if need be, if you need letters to be sent to your parliaments for invitations, we will be able to do that. So I believe we can all count on your support in participating our activities at IPU, but the same way the activities that we partner with the United Nations. So, colleagues, that is our report on what happened on the 21st September of 2024. This sounds funny, but do you adopt this report? Thank you so much, colleagues. It's interesting. So we are now almost nearing the end of our Governing Council. We have finished item 19. Now we are going to item 20, which is other business. But now, colleagues, I have not received any information that any delegation would like to address us on any other item, and I'm trying to look up. I don't see any. That being the case, colleagues, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your cooperation, but also for your insightful contributions that you have made during our 214th session of our Governing Council. As usual, important decisions have been made. I know that I can count once again on your support to implement these decisions which we have made today, but also the day before yesterday. And on Monday. That being the case, I believe we will all be striving to implement the decisions we have made here, because they are all meant to make the world a better place for the people that we represent. I extend my thanks specifically to the Secretary General of our IPU and his entire team for the dedication that they have and for ensuring our Governing Council would go smoothly like it has. Thank you so much, Secretary General. Thank you so much, the entire team of the IPU. You have done a good job. Colleagues, a round of applause for our team. Colleagues, while I have already thanked you, I look forward to once again your commitment to the ideals of IPU, and I also look forward to seeing you soon in April next year, 2025, when we will all be converging in the city of Tashkent in Uzbekistan. So that said, I am now taking this opportunity to adjourn the 214th session of the Governing Council, and I look forward once again to seeing you in the course of the time before we meet next in Tashkent. Thank you so much. The Governing Council, the Governing Council stands adjourned.
Let's take a breather for 5 minutes.
Okay, so we are going to have a 5 minutes break, then the assembly will start. Colleagues, I think we can resume our assembly, which was adjourned. So we will be taking all the items that we had left unfinished when we last met. Now, on the agenda, we have item 2, but we will begin with item 3, which is talking about the general debate on the theme, harnessing science, technology, and innovation for a more peaceful and sustainable future. Then we will go back to the emergency item. Colleagues, we have had substantive and robust deliberations over the past 3 days, having had 157 interventions from 113 national parliaments and 14 partner organizations. Speakers of parliament, deputy speakers, members of parliament, including many young parliamentarians, experts and officials have all shared their experiences, good practices, and wisdom. May I kindly invite, okay, so we are going to use this as a good practice because in our previous meeting we had 2 young parliamentarians representing me to do that. This time also we are going to give a chance to 2 young parliamentarians to do this job on my behalf. So we will have Ms. Mira Al-Suaidi from the UAE, but also Mr. Dan Carden from the United Kingdom. They will be presenting the Geneva Declaration on Science, Technology, and Innovation. So the 2 of you have the floor, and whichever way you have organized yourselves, please go on.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. Dear colleagues, we come together at the 149th IPU Assembly in Geneva to reaffirm our shared commitment to harness science, technology, and innovation, or STI, for addressing the global challenges we face today. Affirming that STI is a vital tool for promoting peace, sustainable development, and human rights. At this time of unprecedented technological progress, we are faced with both immense opportunities as well as pressing challenges. From artificial intelligence to climate change, the potential of STI is vast, but so are the risks of deepening inequalities. It is our responsibility as parliamentarians to ensure that these advancements serve the common good, governed by ethical principles, inclusive government, and global cooperation for the common good. We applaud the bold decisions of nations that have preemptively banned inhumane advanced weapons, setting a precedent for responsible technological governance. This reflects the urgency of acting collectively to ensure that STI fosters trust, peace, and global cooperation.
We are encouraged by recent international commitments, including the Pact for the Future and the Global Digital Compact, adopted at the 2024 UN General Assembly. These arguments offer a roadmap for us to work with governments, the United Nations, and civil society to ensure inclusive and ethical approaches to STI. As representatives of the people, it is our duty to ensure that the benefits of STI reach everyone. We must bridge the digital divide, both between and within nations, and ensure that technological advancements serve all generations and communities. Ethical frameworks are essential to govern STI, ensuring progress aligns with human rights standards and serves societal values. We must also ensure that women, youth, and groups in vulnerable or marginalized situations are fully involved in shaping the future of STI. Their perspectives are critical for ensuring that technological progress is inclusive and equitable. Empowering these groups is not only just, it is essential for creating a diverse and innovative future.
To meet today's global challenges, we must commit to evidence-based policymaking and international collaboration. We must urge nations to invest in research and development, foster science diplomacy, and integrate scientific expertise into parliamentary decisions. STI must drive progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, help build resilient societies, and promote lasting peace. We must mitigate the risks of emerging technologies. Ethical AI development, cybersecurity, and digital privacy are vital to ensuring that technology upholds human rights and is used for peaceful purposes. We must also take steps to prevent the spread of misinformation and harmful content, particularly online, to safeguard social cohesion and democracy.
The technological challenges we face transcend borders, and international cooperation is the only way forward. Together, we can close the STI gap, reduce risks, and build a more secure, prosperous digital world. We, members of Parliament from around the world, therefore reconfirm our commitment to global parliamentary dialogue on STI governance. We welcome the IPU Charter on the ethics of science and technology and the resolution on AI's impact on democracy, and we pledge to bring these principles back to our respective parliaments. By working together, we can harness the power of STI to create a more equitable, sustainable, and technologically advanced world. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. So, colleagues, after that presentation, do I take it that we adopt the declaration? Thank you so much. Sorry?
There's Ireland that wants to take the floor. Yeah, we've adopted.
Yeah. Yes, according to our procedure, we have adopted and then we allow others to take the floor. So having adopted our resolution, I would like to thank the young parliamentarians for the job well done of presenting this to us. Ireland, you have the floor. Please request the floor. 1 minute, please.
Madam Chair, I think this is an excellent document, but there is one weakness in it that I want to flag, and that is the declaration fails to explicitly call for the promotion of knowledge sharing, especially North-South, as emphasised in Article 9 of the IPU Ethical Charter on Science and Technology, adopted by the Governing Council this morning. My colleague from Nigeria referenced vaccines, and my part of the world hasn't exactly covered itself in glory in terms of sharing COVID vaccines quite recently. Our Indonesian colleague referenced the sharing of water technology. So I'm requesting that the declaration would include wording to strengthen worldwide collaboration and exchange in scientific knowledge development and related technology innovations to reflect the need to share technology throughout the world. Thank you.
Colleagues, we take note of what our colleague from Ireland has raised, and it will form part of the records of this meeting. So, having done that, we go back now to item 2. Colleagues, as you are aware, on Tuesday we decided to add to our agenda item number 2, an emergency item on the response by parliamentarians to the urgent plea by the United Nations Secretary General to recommit to multilateralism for global peace, justice, and sustainability. We held a discussion in plenary yesterday morning on this item, and a drafting committee met in the course of the afternoon yesterday to finalize the text with representatives from all the geopolitical groups. May I now invite the rapporteur from the drafting committee, Mr. Cesar Randon Garcia, of Mexico to introduce the draft resolution. Mr. Garcia, you have the floor.
Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, who is also very often the bearer of good news, fellow parliamentarians, I am here today to inform you of the outcome of deliberations of the Drafting Committee on the Emergency Item Resolution, which met yesterday afternoon, 16th of October. The item before you is the outcome of a proposal jointly submitted by the delegations of France, United Kingdom, Germany, Netherlands, and Canada. The title of the resolution before this Assembly reads as follows: Response by parliamentarians to the urgent plea by the UN Secretary General to recommit to multilateralism for global peace, justice, and sustainability. The delegations represented on the drafting committee were those of Argentina, Australia, Burkina Faso, Canada, Germany, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Jordan, Palestine, the Russian Federation, and my own, Mexico. I thank Ms. Michelle Rempel-Garnier from Canada for her professional and respectful chairing and skillful and efficiently seeing us through the challenges we faced. And Madam President, believe me, there were many challenges. The debate was lively, deep, and very thought-provoking. You will see in the resolution the removal of names of specific countries where there is ongoing conflict. I believe it is important for me to explain why. During the course of our discussion, it became clear that many members of the committee wished to address the text around specific conflicts. With the appreciation of the chair, she gave each member of the committee the opportunity to express ourselves relative to the specific concerns we had. After listening to all concerns related to specific countries, the committee agreed it would not be able to find acceptable language for the text given the range of conflicts from Gaza, Lebanon, to Sudan, Myanmar, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Ukraine, and more. The committee therefore agreed to remove all reference to naming specific conflicts in the interest of maintaining the principle of committing our support to strengthening multilateralism and the contributing to the building of a more resilient, just, sustainable world for the benefit of all citizens. The result of our drafting committee deliberations, Madam President, is the result that highlights the gravity of the challenges the global community is facing and the urgent need for our collective response to these challenges. The resolution clearly reaffirms support for multilateralism through the United States, which remains the cornerstone of the multilateral system and of international cooperation. It also highlights our obligations as members of Parliament to ensure we hold to account our respective governments to show full respect for the Charter of the United Nations. Before placing this resolution before the Assembly, the committee has also agreed to call upon the IPU to establish structures to redesign its emergency item submission, debate, and drafting process, with the aim to establish transparent rules-based process which facilitates productive dialogue between IPU members, resulting in meaningful consensus-based resolutions, and present its findings to the Assembly. Madam President, we have a resolution that calls on all of us to commit to the defense of the principles of peace, human rights, dignity, equality, justice, and solidarity, and to recommit to the purpose and principles of multilateralism. I commend it to this Assembly for approval. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we have had the draft resolution. Do I take that we are ready to adopt this resolution? It is so decided. The resolution is adopted, but we have a request here. We have a request according to our Article 32, Sub-Article 2, that delegations may take the floor after the adoption and register the concerns. So once we have had those, we will take them into account. So I have the request from the Russian Federation, Mr. Konstantin Kosachev, and then I have seen Palestine also requesting for the floor. So we will begin with the Russian Federation, Mr. Kosachev. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I would like to commend the efforts of the drafting committee and specifically the rapporteur. Thank you very much for what you've done. You have redrafted the initial text in a very good manner, and the resolution finally is definitely to be approved and adopted. What I cannot commend at all is the initial motion for the emergency item, which was presented by France, United Kingdom, and some more countries. One reason is the topic itself was not that emerging. In the initial text, I could find at least 15 different emergency items to be addressed, and all of them were included in the initial text, and we were supposed to take our position within a couple of hours' time. This is not fair to our assembly, to the union, to make this kind of proposals. This is my first comment. But what is more important, after fact-checking the explanatory memorandum, we discovered that it was based on false grounds. The Secretary General, and it was stated here in the first sentence, never addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations on the 20th of September. And that was the reason this item was called an emergency item. At that date, the 20th of September this year, the General Assembly did not have a meeting, a sitting at all. And what is even worse, the sites which were prescribed to the Secretary General of the United Nations here was not what Mr. Secretary General usually pronounced. It's not his language. And by that, our assembly, during the debate on how we will choose the emergency debate, was misled and manipulated, deliberately or undeliberately, but this is not a misprint. This is a false information. And I feel so sorry about that, because we could have had a different emergency debate. Yesterday, our hemicycle was almost empty, and we had just 4 contributions to the emergency item debate, because it was not so much interesting for everybody here. Unfortunately, we could not use opportunities to discuss other really important emergency items like the situation in the Middle East. And I believe that our assembly needs some kind of apology from those who moved this motion for emergency item. But otherwise, the final result again is absolutely acceptable. Well done. Thank you once again, the drafting committee and Your Excellency, Mr. Rapporteur. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleague. We have noted your concerns as per the rules. And now we will go to Palestine. Please request the floor. We will end this session with Argentina.
Okay.
Palestine, you have the floor.
شكرا سيدة الرئيسة وبداية أود أن أتوجه.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I would like to thank the drafting committee and the rapporteur for all of the work that they have done. I'm sure they wanted to work in a positive and constructive way in order to come up with this resolution, which does include a number of ideas that are significant to us. And these are concrete sorts of points. I would tend to agree with what the representative of Russia had to say about what an emergency item is. We need to think about the IPU and its emergency items and come up with some clear definitions so that we don't have a politicization of the whole process, and ensure that we're in a position to work properly when it comes to these items. And that would enable us to ensure that our resolutions are of genuine assistance to world parliaments when it comes to meeting the challenges that we all face. Multilateralism has had a difficult time, and while it has led to an international system, we seem to have strayed from what we originally agreed, and under considerable pressure. I don't think that parliamentarians can ignore what is happening to us, the Palestinian people, and this is the result of a 1947 of the General Assembly in 1947, when the mistaken decision to divide the land into two, and one state took our land, thus rejecting the UN resolutions. Human life must be our primary concern. All of us have to do what we can to preserve human life, because if we have double standards, we're going to end up completely destroying this international multilateral system that we have agreed, and we will be making life very difficult for us. And we will end up with a situation of no benefit to anybody at all, and in particular of no use to future generations. Parliamentarians have a fundamental responsibility here. And as Palestinians, we do our best to elect a democratic parliament have done our best to try to elect a parliament democratically, as we did 6 years ago, but we're being prevented from so doing. And we would like you to stand with us so that we can have elections and we can work with the IPU. But thank you once again to everybody. Thank you, Madam President.
Argentina, please request the floor and we will close this item. Argentina, request the floor. Go ahead.
You turned it off. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Okay. Go ahead. He keeps turning it off.
Don't touch it. Touch it once. Once it shows green, leave it, and then it will turn red.
It is green. No.
It's
okay.
red now.
Hola, hola.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Madam President. A resolution. This is a resolution that was by a drafting committee that was supposed to consider the text, not do away with half of it. Now, if you have an ongoing policy of bringing obstacles in our way, as done by the Russian Federation, for instance, will mean that we won't be able to move forward. So the quote for the Secretary General of the United Nations was not for 24, but it was 22. Now, on the basis of this understanding about what the UN Secretary General said, the Russian Federation wanted to do away with all this and then not want to refer to the United Nations, which is a strange way of referring to it. Now, now, we can't say that there was no emergency in 2022. Now, the world in which we're today is much worse than what was obtaining in 2022. I've heard countless appeals to respecting the UN resolutions, and I've just heard the Palestinian delegation say that the 1947 UN resolutions were unfair because they generated the conflict. But this was a resolution that was accepted by Israel, but not by the Arab states, which rejected the resolution and caused war and went to war. So I'm very pleased to hear the Palestinian delegation talking about the two-state solution, which was rejected in 47, but they're accepting it now. I regret much in this resolution. I'm sorry there's been no reference to conflict. I'm regretting the fact that there's no reference to the ceasefire that we all want, without saying that there is a need for this ceasefire to involve the release of some 100 hostages who have been held for over a year, including some Argentinians who should have been released. And they have spent a very long time in captivity. And I understand the need to protect life. So why don't you tell Hamas that they have an obligation to protect life, because they are the ones who have taken these hostages and committed any number of crimes. And according to Argentinian law, they are responsible for attacks on the Israeli embassy and are responsible for another terrorist attack in our country. So let's protect life and not have double standards. I do agree, Madam President.
There's a point of
Palestine, is that a point of order? Because you have already addressed the Assembly on this matter. Is it a point of order? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Argentina. Now, point of order from Palestine.
أعتقد أن الموضوع هو نقاش التقرير الذي تم اعتماده والحديث.
Thank you, Madam President. We are supposed to be discussing the draft resolution on the emergency item rather than having a history lesson that seems to show that the Argentinian representative does not seem to know very well. I feel that you should have stopped him from lecturing us, Madam. Thank you.
I think we have to close that. We have to close this issue, colleagues. So, as per our procedure, we have already adopted this resolution. The concerns that have been raised by the members will be duly noted. So, having done that, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has participated in drafting this resolution, irrespective of the challenges that we still have, but at least it's a good step. So thank you so much, the movers of this motion, but also those who participated in drafting it, so that the voice from a broader spectrum was heard. So thank you so much. Item 3, colleagues, we had already dealt with it. So we are now moving to item number 5 of our agenda, which we have before us now, the resolution prepared by the Standing Committee on Democracy and Human Rights on the impact of artificial intelligence on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Further to the work of the Standing Committee, the revised draft resolution has been circulated to you, colleagues, as Assembly Document number A/149/5-DR. I now invite the two rapporteurs of this draft resolution, Ms. Ms. Michelle Rampel Ganya of Canada and Ms. Neema Rugangira of Tanzania to introduce the resolution. And since both of them are on the podium, I will also give them a chance to decide the way they have decided how they are going to address us. Both of you have the floor. Thank you.
Is it on? Thank you, Madam President. It's a great honor for Michelle and I to stand before you, and I'll be touching on the process that we underwent to prepare this resolution. 12 months ago in Angola, after several conversations, Michelle and I decided to put forward a proposal of the IPU resolution on the impact of artificial intelligence on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. And we appeared 3 times before the Committee on Democracy and Human Rights, and we were able to present and defend, and the proposal was subsequently accepted, and it was passed and decided in the 147th IPU Assembly that we will be endorsing it or adopting it today, and here we are. Michelle and I recognize that in order to harness the potential of artificial intelligence, we also need to mitigate the risks of artificial intelligence, particularly on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. And in order to do that, we decided to ensure that we have a strong participatory process throughout the drafting of this resolution. And we brought forward a new way of doing things here at the IPU. We introduced a consultative process, and we thank the IPU for being accommodative. We organized 3 artificial intelligence workshops that were online, and more than 330 members of parliament from 110 parliaments participated. And then we organized another artificial intelligence workshop in Geneva at the 148th Assembly, together with the preparatory debates where more than 150 members of parliament participated. As you can tell, that this process has been very inclusive and participatory. And this entire process not only triggered interest from members of parliament, but also enriched Michelle and I to be able to draft the resolution that you have before you. And most importantly, just to sum up, is that we believe at a time where the world is divided with so many conflicts, we have been able to come together as parliamentarians from different worlds to discuss such a pertinent topic and reach a consensus on the resolution that you have before you. So it is my hope that both Michelle and I are hoping that this resolution on the impact of artificial intelligence on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law will be put to life, will be used, and will be implemented into tangible actions and results. And accordingly, the IPU will lead the process of making sure that the IPU becomes a pioneer of ensuring that we have a global minimum standard of artificial intelligence. And I'll now hand over to Michelle to talk about the contents.
Thank you, colleagues. Colleagues, I want to thank all of the delegations that submitted, I believe it was over 200 amendments to the draft text. I'm thanking you now, but we weren't thanking you a few weeks ago when we were going through all of these, only because there was so much good content and perspectives that I think we both learned a lot from. To conclude on the process, we can assure you that what we tried to do was to take every single one of the amendment proposals and put it into the final draft text that's before you today. And I think the conversation that we had in the steering committee shows, the result shows the conversation that we had, which was approach from a consensus building perspective and resulted in a unanimous consent on the report. Colleagues, our final product touches on many aspects of this particular debate, which we hope will be actioned by your parliaments, as well as initiatives that are already underway at the IPU. The resolution talks about the need for education and capacity building within parliaments, but also within the general public on the economic and societal transformations that could happen because of artificial intelligence, with an emphasis on the potential benefits and threats that this poses to democracy and human rights. We want to thank the work of the Forum of Women Parliamentarians, who put forward many excellent suggestions for bringing a gender lens to this particular work, and we feel that the final text reflects those discussions. The other big thanks that we want to give out a shout out to is to Dennis Naughton and his working group on science technology, which worked hand and glove with us on this for over a year. Dennis was a wonderful champion of two very strong women, and we want to thank him for that, as well as the Secretariat. A special shout out to Andy Richardson, as well as to our teams in our home country, my staff in Canada, as well as Nima's in Tanzania, and both of our delegation secretaries for all their hard work. Colleagues, we think that this is a comprehensive text which can be built on and will stand the test of time as we see a global transformation from artificial intelligence. And colleagues, I just want to close by echoing what Naima said as we close the assembly today. There are so many issues that divide us. There are so many reasons for us to not talk to each other across cultural divides, to learn from each other. Absolutely. But the IPU can provide a forum in which we can build trust and learn from one another. I learned so much from you, Naima. And I feel like I have a lifelong friend. So colleagues, thank you for what was really a positive experience, and we hope that you will all accept this text, take it home and embrace it in your parliaments, and maybe outwit the big tech companies while we're doing it. Thank you, colleagues.
And thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much, Naima. So, colleagues, do I take it that we adopt this resolution? It is decided, and I don't see any delegation wanting to take the floor. So, members, thank you so much for all your participation. As the two co-rapporteurs have spoken here, how you have all participated, thank you. But at the same time, thank you for this novelty that you have come up with. And we believe this is going to form now the baseline for our parliaments to start looking into how we are going to begin regulating the development of the use of AI in our countries, taking into account the challenges that our two colleagues have raised, because we are parliamentarians, so we are concerned not just on the positive side of AI, but also on the other side of AI, where, you know, we can be deeply affected during elections, and that will impact on our democracy, but also human rights and how the deep fakes can actually affect us. At the same time, also the issues of good governance. So thank you so much, Naima. Thank you so much, Michelle. Well done. A round of applause, dear colleagues. So, colleagues, that was item 5. So now we move to item 6, reports of the standing committees. And on this, we are going to begin with our Standing Committee on Peace and International Security. And I would like to invite the acting president of the committee, Mr. Wehley of Switzerland, to present to us the report. Mr. Wehley, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. Here I am once again, dear colleagues, to report back to you on Committee 1, that is the Standing Committee on Peace and International Security, at this 149th IPU Assembly. On the 14th of October, we held a meeting on the role of parliamentarians in preventing conflicts and on natural resources, or linked to natural resources. We then discussed the growing importance of the economic aspects of conflicts. We stressed that climate change is becoming more important, and it's important to have legislation that will ensure a fair distribution of resources such as water, minerals, fertile land, and also to effectively prevent conflicts. We then continued our discussions on nuclear security. At the round table, we stressed that all countries, even if they don't have nuclear centers, that they should all focus on the safety of radioactive material. There's a crucial role of parliaments in ratifying and implementing these agreements, and we recognize that fact. We also looked at the need to protect radioactive material, while at the same time facilitating international cooperation for peaceful use. On the 16th of October, we had an experts meeting to promote the two-state solution in Palestine. We had both the Palestinian and Israel party, as well as 2 experts present, looking at a new definition of what the two-state solution could be. We discussed the role of parliaments to promote sustainable peace in the region, stressing good governance, security, and the dignity of peoples. This last meeting made it possible for Mr. Asni bin Hamad, parliamentarian from Malaysia, to be elected to the Bureau of the committee and to be elected vice president. We congratulate him and look forward to working together with him. On the 16th of October, the Bureau of the committee met and we talked about our activities on peace and security with regard to different conflicts around the world, and we began thinking about subjects that we want to put forward to the committee to study. We finished looking at the anti-personal landmine ban treaty, and we also looked at the event with the Prince of Jordan, who is carrying out action to promote the universalization of this anti-landmine treaty. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, do we note this report? Thank you so much. It is so noted. May I also take this opportunity to recall, dear colleagues, that at the 148th Assembly this past March, the Assembly approved the theme of the next resolution of the first standing committee, which will deal with the role of parliaments in advancing the two-state solution in Palestine. 2 rapporteurs were identified on this occasion, Mr. Bochet of Algeria and Speaker Batima of Ireland. The Assembly also agreed that, as proposed by the Bureau of the Standing Committee, given the complexity of this issue and the wish to render this exercise as inclusive as possible, that I would, as President of IPU, engage in consultation with a view to identifying additional rapporteurs from the other regions. I am pleased to inform you, colleagues, that following such consultations, I'd like to propose the following additional rapporteurs to work on the draft resolution that will be submitted for adoption on the occasion of the 150th IPU Assembly in April 2025. Ms. Marcela Guerra of Mexico, who will help us bring the perspective of women, peace and security. Ms. Sovina Vardanyan of Armenia, who will bring in the youth perspectives. But we also have Mr. Tangiu Tikere of New Zealand and Deputy Speaker Tsepang Sitamosena of Lesotho. I don't know if they're all here. Marcela, she has just left. Sovina Vardanyan of Armenia, are you in? It's probably out as well. Tangiu Tikere of New Zealand. Okay. And Deputy Speaker Sepang Sitamosena of Lesotho. Okay. Sorry? Where? I don't see her. But anyway, we have consulted with them and they're ready to join this team. So, colleagues, we will have a group of 6 rapporteurs, 3 women and 3 men from all our geopolitical groups to work on this critically important resolution. And that said, I wish that the Assembly would endorse this proposal. Thank you very much, colleagues. It is so decided. I would like now to pass on to the Standing Committee on Sustainable Development. And on this, I will invite the President of the Committee, Mr. Waven William of Seychelles, to present the report. Mr. William, you have the floor.
All glory be to God, the Almighty, for His grace and favor. On the outset, I would like to express my thanks to IPU Secretariat, our Committee Secretary, Alexandria, Carly, and Isabel for their usual dedicated support. I would also like to thank members of our committee for their valuable contributions during our deliberations these past few days. And Dennis, my friend, I would like to thank you for being a mentor, and the committee wish you all the best in your future undertakings. Madam President, the Standing Committee on Sustainable Development held 3 debates during this assembly, with participation from approximately 50 delegations. The first debate focused on parliamentary strategies to mitigate the lasting effects of conflicts, including armed conflicts, on sustainable development. This aligns with the theme of a resolution to be presented at the committee's next session in April 2025. Delegates unanimously recognize that conflicts hinder progress towards the SDGs, often reversing gains already made. Parliamentarians were urged to advocate for sustainable development strategies that positively impact conflict prevention, responses, and recovery. Central to these efforts is engagement with the communities to address their needs. The second debate centered on preparations for the parliamentary meeting at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP29, scheduled for 16th to 17th November in Baku, Azerbaijan, in the COP Green Zone. Mr. Sultan Mamadov, the rapporteur, presented the key directions of the preliminary draft outcome document expected to be adopted. He emphasized the document's call for parliaments to support legislations aimed at reducing greenhouse gases emissions, facilitating the transition to green and renewable energy, and advancing the implementation of the NDCs. Amendments to the draft document submitted by 5 countries meeting the deadline are currently under review. Parliamentarians from 8 countries, alongside members of the IPU Advisory Group on Health, provided additional recommendations, suggesting the inclusion of language on green jobs, agroforestry, health-related climate impacts, accelerating the loss and damage funds across process, and its sustainability mechanism. The third debate, Madam President, addressed the role of parliaments in preventing corporate tax avoidance and advancing sustainable development. Experts from the OECD and UNDP engaged in a robust dialogue, moderated by Senator Deborah O'Neill from Australia, on how tax revenue can help achieve the SDGs. With only 5 years remaining to meet the 2030 agenda and an estimated US $4 trillion required, effective taxation is seen as a key tool to finance the SDGs. A well-functioning tax system can generate revenue for public services, spur national economic growth, combat illicit financial flows, reduce inequalities, and promote fairness. Parliamentarians have a vital role to play, from mobilizing domestic resources to partnering with tax authorities and educating the citizens on the importance of taxation for public services and sustainable development. Delegates engaged fully, underscoring the need for stronger legislative frameworks, corporate tax avoidance prevention, greater transparency, and enhanced multilateral cooperation. Additionally, the need for specific capacity building for parliamentarians on the subject. Last but not least, elections were held for positions on the bureau of the committee. Mr. Mohamed Zayed El Meher of Tunisia was elected as a new member, and Mr. Sergei Gavrilov from the Russian Federation was elected for a 2nd term. The committee also approved its work plan for the 150th IPU Assembly, dedicating all sittings to drafting the resolution. In conclusion, Madam President, let me leave you with this reality finding. According to the UN on SDGs, Only 17% of the SDG targets are on track to be met on time. Recent assessment shows that the world's poorest and vulnerable groups are mostly being affected. Whilst I commend the IPU for adopting numerous declarations and resolutions illustrating Parliament's political will, there is the need to step up parliamentary coordinated action plan to accelerate the implementation, echoed in the workshop held on the 14th October on the theme Practical Tools to Achieve the SDGs. Excellencies, honorable colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, on a note for further reflection, are we representatives of the people doing ourselves justice? Are we at peace with ourselves to put aside our differences, to build bridges between us, and to unify our efforts for precision in our efforts and actions? Do not let our emotions deny us the opportunity to do what is right, just, and fair. Above all else, let us not lose sight of the IPU guiding principles and values. Madam President, I have been advised to say this by the IPU Seeds Grouping's President, to thank IPU, Madam President, you and the SG for making space for the group to meet, and that the Seeds Group looks forward for more official recognition in the transformation of IPU going forward to address the vulnerable groupings towards achieving the SDGs. I wish you all a safe trip back home, and as you go, be always mindful of how, in your respective countries, you can influence the acceleration of Sustainable Development Action Plan implementation to the best of your ability. Madam President, I thank you.
Thank you so much, William. Colleagues, do I take it that the Assembly takes note of this report? Thank you very much. It is so decided. Now I'd like to go on and call the President for the Standing Committee on the United Nations Affairs, Mr. McGuinty of Canada, to present his report. Mr. McGuinty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you very much, colleagues, those of you who are still here. That shows quite a bit of dedication. Colleagues, our committee held 2 meetings over the past week, on Tuesday and Wednesday. In just over 4 hours, over 2 sittings, we covered a lot of ground, with discussions ranging from the complexities of the United Nations budget to the role of the G20 in relation to the United Nations, and the role of parliaments in the United Nations treaty-making process. Furthermore, we followed up on the 2 practical motions the committee adopted at previous assemblies, one on gender equality in the General Assembly, and another on Security Council reform. We're encouraging each member and all of you to act on these motions, bring them to your parliaments, introduce them on the floor, bring them to your committees, share them with your head of state, take steps to operationalize them. Let me highlight how our rich debate raised a number of key points over those meetings. First, parliaments have a key role to play in overseeing the United Nations budget process. The UN spends roughly $74 billion a year. What does that mean? First and foremost, ensuring that our nation's assessed contributions to the UN are paid in full and on time. Parliamentarians told us they need a better understanding of the UN budget process, and discussion in this regard will continue at our committee. At the same time, the United Nations has got to make efforts to make its budgeting far more transparent. The current financial crisis at the UN has got to be addressed without delay to ensure continuity of support to countries in desperate need. Ideally, the United Nations should have the lead role in coordinating global economic governance, and the G20 should be focused on implementing those UN outcomes that are more fully within the power of the leading economies who meet there. For this to happen, however, the UN should first strengthen its own deliberative processes. Many Many members have walked away from the ECOSOC process. We need to get that back. Parliaments are ultimately responsible for funding the UN and the G20 and for ensuring these institutions actually work well together. Every effort has got to be made to avoid competition and duplication of work. We are the recipients of the outcomes. We receive the treaties, the resolutions, the commitments, the targets, the actions, the calls to action. Every effort's got to be made to avoid competition and duplication of work. Another angle, what is the role of the P20? That is the meeting of the speakers of parliaments from the G20 countries, and that needs further clarification. Those P20 parliaments have got to contribute more actively to deliberations, with additional debates held within their relevant parliamentary committees. So a stronger institutional link between the P20 and the G20 proper will ensure that our community, and we speak for our peoples, that community is actually heard. Parliaments have a role, finally, in the ratification and implementation of treaties, even where the Constitution establishes a strict separation of powers between executive and legislative branches. At a minimum, parliaments can help raise public awareness and support for a new treaty, and ask their government for regular briefings on the treaty-making process. Finally, very pleased to announce that 5 members were elected to the Bureau, 5 new members. They are Mr. Al-Nouri from Libya, Ms. Basirovna from the Russia Federation, Mr. Rashkov from Belarus, Mr. Thakur from India, and Mr. Laram from Germany. Mr. Bustamante from Peru was re-elected to a 2nd term. Congratulations to all the new members on their appointment. Looking forward to working with them. Finally, folks, we're strongly encouraging their member parliaments and those of our other Bureau members to ensure they are included in the delegations to the upcoming IPU assemblies and available to participate. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations and the IPU have a rich and growing relationship. We're going to have to work hard to make sure that that relationship is maintained. We're going to have to hold, to a certain extent, the United Nations to account so we can properly defend them in our respective parliaments. That is a central objective as we pursue our work at the committee. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. McKinty. Colleagues, do we take note of this report? It is noted. I would also like to take this opportunity to wish all the newly elected office holders of this committee, wish them success. So we hope to work closely with you. Colleagues, we now, having finished the reports of the standing committees, we now go to item 7 of our agenda, which is approval of the subject item for the Standing Committee on Democracy and Human Rights at the 151st IPU Assembly and appointment of the co-rapporteurs. Colleagues, document A/149/7-R.1, as you will see, the Standing Committee on Democracy and Human Rights is proposing as its subject item for the next 1-year cycle the theme of recognizing and supporting the victims of illegal international adoption and taking measures to prevent this practice. Mr. De Maegd from Belgium and Ms. Kressel from Argentina have been designated as co-rapporteurs on this subject, together with Mr. Patra from India. So, colleagues, do we adopt this decision? Thank you very much. It is so decided.
Mr. Budanda wanted to take it. Mr. Budanda, Zimbabwe.
Okay. Wait. Zimbabwe, Speaker Mudenda, you have the floor.
Yeah, I feel very uncomfortable, thank you, Mr. President, because you have hit your hammer already. Before we could comment, it was at the speed of lightning. This subject matter, Madam President, as far as I can see, hasn't got the universal appeal. There are several issues that are taking place in the world now which will require, you know, some interventions by parliaments. With all the due respect to the committee, I really feel that this subject has got limitations in terms of its expansiveness at the moment in the world. As you have already ruled, perhaps you can only take note of my observation, but otherwise it hasn't got the expansive qualification to really embrace universal approach in terms of looking at this subject. As far as the 180 parliaments are concerned, it is a very shallow subject, I'm afraid.
Well, like you rightly noted, we will take note, but even if we hadn't adopted, because the procedure, by the time the proposal comes here, it has already gone through the Bureau of the Standing Committee, then the Standing Committee has already approved it, and I want to think we also have representatives there, but that doesn't mean whatever views that you have that this is the end, because this is just, we are proposing the subject item. So it can always be broadened through our representatives to those committees and add whatever they feel would be more appropriate under the current situation, because you have a whole year working on this. So your points are noted, but at the same time, I believe the leadership of this committee and even the new members that we have elected in the course of the day will be taking note of what you have said, and they can definitely try to see what they can include in this, under this theme. So, colleagues, we had already adopted the decision in respect of the rapporteurs and the theme itself. Now, that said, we will go to item 8, which is talking about amendments to the IPU statutes and rules. Colleagues, in 2023, a broad consultation was carried out on possible amendments to the IPU statutes and rules, further to which proposals were gathered from member parliaments, the geopolitical groups, the IPU's specialized bodies, and the IPU Secretariat. The proposals were studied extensively by a working group established by the Executive Committee in March 2024. They held 3 meetings of the working group held 3 meetings between March and May 2024. Subsequently, at its meeting in Zanzibar in 2024 June, the Executive Committee agreed on a series of proposed amendments, which are distributed to you members as number capital A/149/8-P.1 for submission to the membership 3 months prior to the 149th Assembly as per Article 30 of the Statutes. By the deadline of 2nd September 2024, amendments to the statutes, and 14th September 2024, amendments to the rules, several member parliaments had availed themselves of the opportunity to provide feedback and propose sub-amendments. The admissible sub-amendments and clarifications from the Secretariat on several related points were sent to the membership on 26 October 2024. The document is numbered capital A/149/8-P.1-AM. At its meeting on 11th October 2024, the Executive Committee endorsed the sub-amendments proposed by France and Switzerland and referred the proposed amendment to Article 10, Sub-Article 1 of the Statutes, along with the sub-amendments proposed by Thailand and Turkey, back to the working group for further consideration. The working group will resume its work later in 2024 to consider this matter along with other pending requests. This document, colleagues, contains the final proposed amendments to the statutes and rules of the Assembly. The Assembly is invited to adopt these amendments, and here we are using the word final in the sense that much as this is a work in progress, the amendments which have been agreed upon are being brought to you so that we approve them, and then they form part of our statutes and rules. So the other provisions which our working group is still working on, they are not part of this document. A separate document, colleagues, CL/214/9-P.1-Rev was approved earlier today, containing amendments to the rules of the Governing Council, the rules of the Executive Committee, the rules of the Standing Committee, the rules of the Forum of Women Parliamentarians, and the rules and working modalities of the Forum of Young Parliamentarians. Dear colleagues, I believe you have had a chance to go through the amendments because these documents were circulated to you earlier in advance. And having done that and the brief explanation which I have just given you, do we approve the amendments to the IPU statutes and assembly rules? It is so decided. Thank you very much. Colleagues, as per our practice, we usually hear some remarks from representatives of the geopolitical groups. Sometimes it's their president, sometimes it's their designate. So today we will hear also from the the following geopolitical groups, and I would request that, colleagues, you take a maximum of 2 minutes. So we will begin with the Arab group, will be followed by Asia Pacific. The Arab group will be represented by a member of parliament from Tunisia, Mr. Mehgoub. Mr. Mehgoub, you have the floor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين.
In the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful. Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, Speakers of Parliament, Heads of Delegation, ladies and gentlemen, may God's peace and blessings be upon you. I am addressing you this evening on behalf of the Arab group at the closing of this 149th Assembly. I would like to begin by thanking our President, the Secretary General, and all of the team on the Secretariat. Thank you to all of you for having ensured the smooth working of this Assembly. Thank you for everything that you have done to ensure that our parliamentary initiatives are strengthened. We have had a number of exchanges and rich debates in which we have considered a number of issues of concern throughout the world today. Sometimes we had quite passionate exchanges. That is, after all, the nature of parliamentary life. That is who we are. I simply hope that all of these debates will help us to better steer our parliamentary activities. We must ensure that we adopt a language of dialogue rather than a language of violence. This in order to ensure that we can ensure that everyone enjoys the respect for cultural, religious values. Madam President, we had hoped that the Arab group's emergency item proposal on the situation in Palestine would be adopted. We hope to convey a clear message to the world on the need to bring an end to the war in Gaza and the Middle East, a war that is victimizing women and children. That did not happen, but I'm sure that all people and all parliamentarians know that this silence, this impunity cannot continue. This must ensure that it does not continue, because the Zionist entity is continuing with its violence and its attacks and considers itself to be able to act with impunity. That seems to be the case, since no one seems to be able to bring an end to the Israeli actions. The United Nations can't, neither can those who remain silent. We must raise our flag high. We must be heard in order to ensure that international humanitarian law, international law are respected. If we remain silent, other countries might take the same kind of attitude, and that will mean that we will all be governed by the law of the jungle. I would ask all of you to do everything that you can to ensure that there is an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon and in Gaza in order to have Palestine at peace in an independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital. I would invite my parliamentary colleagues to go back to their parliaments and invite them to implement the relevant United Nations resolutions on this question, and to take into account the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice too. We must, all of us here within the IPU, work actively for peace. We must bring an end to injustice, and we must ensure that this peace we have so long waited for is actually with us. May God's peace be upon you.
Asia Pacific, Mr. Zhong Yang from China. You have the floor.
Madam President, dear colleagues, thank you for giving me the floor. It's a great honor for me to address you today on behalf of APG. First of all, we would like to extend our sincere thanks to IPU President, the IPU Secretary General, and all of you here for your outstanding work for this assembly. Please allow me to explain the transition in the chair of Asia Pacific Group first. Since the previous chair was not able to continue its role, after consultations by the IPU Secretariat with members and in accordance with the rules of procedure of APG, China has taken the responsibility of serving as the new chair of the group. Effective from this APG meeting, and will remain in this position during the 115th IPU Assembly. On 13 October, we held the APG meeting, which was attended by 19 delegations. We would especially thank Madam President Tulia Aksung for attending and addressing the APG meeting despite of her extremely tight schedule. The meeting was undoubtedly a great success, with plenty of consensus reached within the group. During the meeting, APG members expressed their strong support for and interest in participating in the IPU-related work. With a large number of candidates competing for vacancies within the APG for IPU positions. With concerted efforts of all members, 17 candidates were eventually nominated, and after coordination and votes, it was agreed that the APG will endow parliamentaries from Malaysia, Australia, India, Thailand, and Maldives as candidates to the corresponding committees and other bodies. We also deliberated on emergency item proposals. Additionally, China briefed the group on the first preparatory committee meeting for the 60th Speakers Conference. Last but not least, the Asia-Pacific Group would congratulate everyone present here for what we have achieved during this assembly, which is a resounding success in expanding our common ground as regards harnessing science, technology, and innovations for a more peaceful and sustainable future, boosting parliamentary cooperation in regulating the development of AI, combating corporate tax avoidance, strengthening ties with the UN, reserving peace for the world, and enhancing multilateralism, among others. The APG is happy and privileged to be part of this progress and stands ready for follow through our achievement hand in hand with other parliaments. It's our belief that given the turbulent international landscape and growing instability worldwide, it is the common aspirations of our parliaments as representatives of our peoples to promote cooperation, dialogue, solidarity, and just making considerable contributions to the common and bright future for mankind. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Now we will hear from Maria del Carmel. Maria del Carmel. This handwriting? Alva from GRULAC. You have the floor, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Deseo presentar mis saludos en nombre.
I bring you greetings from the GRULAC, and we President of the IPU and Secretary General, we would like to thank and congratulate you, as well as the IPU staff, who, as usual, have done excellent work, and the Speaker very kindly thanks the interpreters. The President of GRULAC and the Vice President of the group would like to apologize for having had to go back home because of commitments they have there. We had 9 members at our first meeting. The delegations were Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, Guyana, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, the Dominican Republic, and Suriname. And our associate members were the Parlatina and Parla Sur assemblies. And their speakers were with us, the president from Cuba and Argentina, respectively, for these assemblies. We had to deal with vacancies on the executive committee, and we made decisions with respect to replace the MP from Uruguay who has stepped down, and I was honored with the election to this. Then we considered the emergency item, and we agreed on the situation of children involved in war throughout the world. And this resolution was sponsored by a number of GRULAC members. As you know, we didn't get 2/3 of support from when there was a vote on the emergency item, and we feel that there will be future occasions to consider the situation of children in war too. We would like to congratulate the Assembly of the IPU because we had 2 assemblies where we were not able to agree on an emergency item, but we have now done that, and we have agreed a resolution on the need to strengthen multilateralism in order to build peace and sustainability. I wish all of you a very safe trip home. I hope you all have a good weekend back in your homes, and look forward to seeing you at the next assembly.
Thank you so much, colleagues. This is our new member of the Executive Committee of the IPU. So you have seen her and you have heard her. Colleagues, now I'll call Mr. Kouassi from Côte d'Ivoire, representing the Africa Geopolitical Group.
Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, speakers, heads of delegation, participants. We have come to the end of the 149th Assembly of our Union. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all participants, but most particularly our President, Atulia Axon, who has presided over our work with such brilliance. I would also like to extend thanks to the Secretary General. He has made invaluable contributions to the success of this Assembly. I would also like to thank the Swiss authorities for having hosted us in such comfort and so effectively. We are grateful to the IPU, which has awarded our colleague from Chad with their prize. Now that the curtain is coming down on this assembly, we must acknowledge that there is a persistence of armed conflict throughout the world. Even though we did not have it on our agenda, we must recall how serious the situation is in Gaza and the Lebanon. We must ensure that this region is steered towards peace. This thanks to the implementation of the relevant United Nations resolutions. Aside from the situation in the Middle East, we must also recognize the armed conflicts in Africa, particularly those raging in the DRC, Sudan, and some of the countries of the Sahel. Above and beyond these armed conflicts, our continent is also vulnerable to natural disaster and epidemics such as malaria, diphtheria, and monkeypox. We do face challenges, but I do believe in our resilience. We must ensure that we all defend multilateralism, political dialogue, the respect for international law, solidarity, peace and development. Ladies and gentlemen, our people expect a great deal of us. It is our duty to do what they expect of us, and we must do this in keeping with the decisions made by our founding fathers. We must ensure that we keep up with the times. That is why we do support the working group on amendments on the statutes and rules, chaired by Ms. Muti of Zambia, another African contributing to the work of the IPU. We hope that this group will be able to look on the rules underpinning our adoption of an emergency item so that there is more clarity with respect to procedure there. And we also would like to see the work with what is being done in Africa in order to ensure that we strengthen those institutions. I wish all of you a safe trip home, and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Now we will hear from 12+, Mr. Laurent Welly from Switzerland, who is our host, but at the same time, he's now serving as Vice President of the 12+ group and the incoming President of the Geopolitical group. Mr. Welly, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, colleagues, Mr. Secretary General, the 12+ met on the 12th of October for a long afternoon meeting, and they met every morning from the 14th to the 17th. It also celebrated its 50th anniversary. We would like to thank you, Madam President, and Mr. Secretary General for having joined us, and thank you, Madam President, for having given a speech when we celebrated that anniversary. The group elected a new president, yours truly. I would like to thank my predecessor, Senator Griffois, for everything that he did for the 12+. He had to go back to Belgium, which is why I am taking the floor on his behalf now. The 12+ were very active in the various committee meetings that were held here. I would like to thank Ms. Michelle Rempel of Canada for her work on AI and its effects on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. And we would also like to congratulate our colleague on the election as rapporteur for one of the forthcoming resolutions. And we also would like to thank the President of the Committee on the United Nations, who's going to be looking at very complicated and significant issues. We would also like to thank Mr. Norton of Ireland, who is our dynamic chair for the group on science and technology. And we now today have the ethical charter on science and technology, partly as a result of his hard work. And we would also like to thank our colleague from the Netherlands, who has worked on the Committee on Middle East questions. Then we would also like to thank our colleagues who've done work on the emergency item, and Ms. Rempel, who chaired the drafting committee so admirably. Madam President, we've had some rather intense discussions in recent days, and we'd like to thank you for the able way in which you have presided over our work. And we know that you have every interest in exploring all avenues to dialogue in the interests of peace. That said, our group does continue to regret your visit to President Putin. He is indeed a head of state, but we have adopted resolutions against him because of war crimes in Ukraine, because of the removal of children from Ukraine to Russia. Colleagues, I'm very well aware that we must avoid double standards, but you must bear in mind that Ukraine has done nothing but respect international law and defend itself from an aggressor that has used every possible excuse for attacking it. Madam President, we are pleased that we have had a fruitful meeting. I think we must now move forward, and the 12 Plus has every intention of continuing to work with you for the IPU and for all that the IPU might be doing in the future in the interest of peace particularly. We welcome what is currently under consideration by the Executive Committee, and we are committed to working with everyone else towards on all of those principles which we believe in and on all those undertakings we have made. I would like to thank colleagues for all the inspiring contributions they've made to our debates. I would like to thank the Secretary General and his staff. Once again, you've done a brilliant job, this for the 149th Assembly here in Geneva, and we welcome that. We would also like to thank all of the staff, people with the different delegations who have done everything they can to ensure that they keep up and monitor every situation. We were delighted to be able to welcome you here in my country, here in Geneva. I wish all of you a safe trip home, wish you every success in your future parliamentary endeavours, and look forward to meeting you at the 150th Assembly of the IPU next year. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Now we'll go to the remarks by the Secretary General.
Madam President, distinguished members of the IPU, dear guests, delegates, I am cognizant of the lateness of the hour, but I would not resist the temptation or urge to express my deep satisfaction at the way this assembly has unfolded. Over the past few days, there have been several moments in this room and in other venues in this assembly building when our members have expressed opposing views and passions have run high. These moments can feel very tense and uncomfortable, but they are one of the main raison d'etre of our IPU assemblies. In this global forum for dialogue and diplomacy, we must all feel comfortable to express ourselves, listen respectfully, and search for common ground. As I reflect on the deliberations over the past several days, I am confident and convinced that the call that I launched at the opening of this assembly has been heard. I did enjoin all of you to be resilient, not to yield to despair in the face of the daunting challenges facing our global community. I am confident that that message was heard, that message of hope was heard, when we look at the various outcomes of our deliberations here. We have discussed science, technology, and innovation, and had many examples of good practice that parliaments are using to improve the way they are doing business for humanity. If harnessed and regulated properly, technological advances can help us achieve great things, including the resolution of the conflicts that we see around the world. The same is true for artificial intelligence. We need to keep our eye on the ball. It is clear that artificial intelligence presents many exciting opportunities, but we need to be ready to legislate for and mitigate the risks. We have rededicated ourselves to multilateralism in response to the United Nations Secretary General's appeal for greater support for the multilateral system. I am pleased that the emergency item resolution that was adopted earlier during this session has been inspired by the words of the UN Secretary General. This is, I believe, a fitting response to the message emerging from the Pact for the Future that Madam President mentioned in her report. The Pact for the Future clearly expresses the determination and commitment of member states of the United Nations to work with parliaments and the IPU in a joint fashion in order to resolve the conflicts that we are facing in the world today. And so the message of the emergency item resolution is very clear and unequivocal. You have recommitted, you have rededicated yourselves to a multilateral system that is better suited to addressing the multiplicity of challenges facing the world today. You have, during this session of the Assembly, celebrated a number of important anniversaries. You have celebrated the 10 years of the Forum of Young Parliamentarians. You have celebrated the 10 years of the Common Principles for Support to Parliaments. And you have celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Mine Ban Treaty. It may seem frivolous to celebrate these milestones, but in so doing, we bring these important issues back onto the agenda. Youth participation, mutual support for stronger parliaments, and of course, the complete elimination of anti-personnel mines are very critical issues indeed. We have once again seen the IPU family grow with the return of Jamaica and their prospects of other parliaments rejoining the fold of the IPU. Universal membership remains one of our greatest aspirations, and every step we take on the road towards achieving this is welcome. I encourage you to reach out to all those non-members of the IPU to realize the benefits of being part of our wonderful global parliamentary community. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot conclude my remarks without paying glowing tribute to our President, Dr. Tulia Axon. We want to thank you very much and appreciate you for the sterling manner in which you have presided over the deliberations of this assembly. There have been ups and downs during this assembly, but all of these have been managed with maestro. I thank you very much for your leadership. As Secretary General of this organization, I reiterate our offer to continue to be of assistance to you in the discharge of the high office of President of the IPU. Let me also say how my colleagues and I have been honored to be able to provide you with the opportunity to carry out your deliberations in a more or less smooth fashion. We have had the privilege of hosting you over the past several days, and it has not been an easy task for us. However, I can assure you that my colleagues and I have put our best foot forward in order to deliver on your expectations. And on their behalf, I want to apologize for any shortcomings in the management of this event. Let me conclude by thanking the unsung heroes of our assemblies, those that we don't see, but who are working in the background to make this assembly a success. I'm referring to the language staff, the interpreters, the room assistants who have been here with us to break down barriers of communication. I really appreciate your contribution. I also want to pay tribute to the staff of the IPU. They are our foot soldiers, and I really appreciate their contribution in making this organization what it is. So thank you very much, and I will yield the floor. Madam President, may I be permitted to call on you to deliver your closing remarks. Thank you very much.
I was just about to call myself, and then the Secretary General volunteered, so I am grateful. I didn't have to call myself. Dear friends, dear colleagues, it has been a busy assembly, and I am sure you are all keen for me to be brief. I'll try my best to be. It is with some regret that I have noted that at times the atmosphere at this assembly has been tense and polarized. As we have acknowledged in our emergency item resolution, and in the words of the United Nations Secretary General, the world is edging towards becoming a powder keg, paralyzed by dysfunction and held hostage by geopolitical tensions. I also regret that we have not been able to present a united position on the situation in the Middle East. But we must end this assembly on a note of positivity. The solutions are right here in front of us. A reinvigorated multilateral system, better respect for the fundamental principles of international law, a rejection of violence and human suffering, global cooperation to find solutions for a better future, and most importantly, dialogue. After all, that is what parliaments are all about: talking and listening. Parliamentary diplomacy will be key in repairing the damage of the past few years of global tension. Although the emergency item resolution does not focus on a specific situation, it is a first step in identifying the many areas of common ground we have and in rebuilding a consensus on how we can build a more peaceful world. And we have many other reasons to be proud of our achievements at this assembly. Our Committee to Promote Respect for International Humanitarian Law has adopted a strong plea for member parliaments to put pressure on the parties to the conflict in the Middle East to avert the full-scale war in the region, which would affect us all. In our general debate, colleagues and friends, we have taken good note that science, technology, and innovation can offer great hope for a more peaceful and sustainable future. We heard a note of true optimism from Bertrand Piccard that the technological solutions to protect our environment for future generations are already there. We just have to embrace them. We have begun to grapple with how artificial intelligence will impact our democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. We must keep this question at the forefront of our minds, as this technology will only continue to advance, and we cannot imagine the ways in which it might be deployed, for good or for bad. And we have finally taken steps to modernize our statutes and rules, notably lowering the age below which we consider members of parliament to be young, but also fixing inconsistencies, removing redundant practices, and enshrining the new ones. Our work on this will continue to make the IPU fit for the future. Dear friends, dear colleagues, we must continue our work to uphold the values of this organization: democracy, equality, respect, inclusivity, solidarity, and dignity for all. And we must hold on to the hope that we can have a bright future. I thank you all for your commitment and hard work, and look forward to seeing you again in Uzbekistan next year. I would like to take this opportunity now to declare that the 149th Assembly is officially closed. So, colleagues, since we had agreed The meeting is closed, but we are going to officially end it as we started with an anthem. So I'm going to request all of you to rise for our IPU anthem.